Dr. Jack Kruse. Wow. Those are some wild sunglasses you got. What kind of glasses are those?
It's black blue light.
Blue light glasses.
Yeah.
Those are pretty cool looking.
Yep.
Also, I love your hat. Make America healthy again.
Yeah, just picked that up in Dallas from Nicole Shanahan.
Oh, yeah. We were just talking off camera how you just came from Dallas. What were you doing there?
Doing some work with both of them about current events. And I was there with Mary Bowden, who is an ENT surgeon that was just canceled by the state of Texas. She lost her ability to practice, and then she fought the FDA. And then me, because I've been a renegade for pretty much 20 years, they've been coming after me to try to shut me up. So
okay, for people that aren't aware of you, can you give me just sort of like a brief background of where you come from and what your expertise is?
Yeah, well, where I come from is New York City, but where I practice is predominantly in the south part of the United States. When I was 40 years old, about 20 years ago, I had an awakening that everything that we're doing in centralized medicine was wrong. And then something happened to me where it kind of woke me up. And I was given a talk at a minimally invasive spine meeting in Birmingham, Alabama. And I needed help to get at the podium because I tore a knee meniscus on my knee just from standing up. And one of the orthopedic surgeon's wives were there, and she worked for a biotechnology company. She goes, I know why this happened to you. And she goes, I'm going to send you, 6 papers and a book. And I want you to read the book first, and you can figure it out from there. What she was trying to tell me at that time is that Big Pharma, was cooking the books. And it was about a hormone called leptin. Leptin was relatively new at the time. I didn't even learn about it in medical school because it was discovered after I graduated. And they shelved the trials. And what she was trying to tell me at that time was that Big Pharma was going to do something to kind of scam the public, ruin the public's health. And when they canceled the trials, they immediately went out and started to patent cold receptors and do some really bizarre things. And she knew there was something nefarious going on. And she said, look, my husband says you're a pretty smart guy. You probably figure it out. And that was actually the story that she wanted me to figure out. But I went a totally different way with it. The book she gave me was kind of interesting. It's a fable. It's called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma. And in that book...
The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari?
Yeah, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. It's a good book. It's a fable. It's not a true story. But she wanted me to read that because the story in there was important for the paper she sent me. It was about a guy named Julian Battles, a Jewish lawyer in New York, has a heart attack. He's a train wreck. He's low dopamine, overweight, an asshole, the classic, stereotype of a New Yorker. And he quits, sells his Ferrari and goes up to the top of the Himalayan mountains, comes back a year later, tan, thin, and actually filled with wisdom and actually a nice guy. And he comes back, to his old world and this and that. And then she gives me the papers and I read the papers. And I thought she was trying to tell me is what was in the book possible? That's not what she was trying to tell me. She was trying to warn me that they shelved the leptin trials because they had a new drug in development and they wanted me to talk about it. And that's not what happened. So this is now 6 years after this, after I figured out that everything that I learned in medical school was not true. It's really based on, quantum mechanics. The physics of organisms are the key. Circadian biology is the key. Like, we are decentralized, meaning that there's no central controller. That's not what they teach you in medical school. It's not what they teach you in residency. But then 6 or 7 years later, after talking to several people who knew her, I knew what she wanted me to talk about. So I decided to do a TED Talk about that very issue. And the TED Talk got canceled. It was...
How does a TED Talk get canceled? Did it get shut down on YouTube or whatever?
Well, it was Big Pharma shut it down.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why has a lot to do, what was in the book. And, current events now. You know about Ozempic, you know about the GLP-1 drugs. Mm-hmm. What you don't know is that this was all preconditioned by the FDA. In 1974, we had saccharin. 1977, you have high fructose corn syrup. All of those are GLP agonists, just so you know that. So they have known about this, and the FDA, when the last little bit was in, I believe, in 89, they approved sucralose, which is, Splenda.
Right.
And Splenda was only supposed to be in certain foods and drinks, and then they expanded it to pretty much anything that's, a processed food. And that's one of the reasons why processed food is really bad for you, because it's got an agonist for GLP-1, so it's designed to make you fat. And it turns out that the non-native EMF, which is what blue light is, married with these changes that have happened in food, was the story of leptin. So I decided, because where I was going the first 6 years of this, more on the light story, more on the other doctor that got canceled for the non-native EMF story, which is a guy named Robert O. Becker. He's a orthopedic surgeon.
So is this the guy who worked for DARPA?
Well, he didn't work for DARPA.
I heard, because I read a book called, from this lady who I'm friends with, Annie Jacobson. She wrote a book called The Pentagon's Brain. She wrote this deep story on the history of DARPA and some of the scientists that work for it. And she talks about this limb regeneration guy who was trying to figure out limb regeneration for soldiers.
Yeah, he figured it out. But the bad problem is when he figured it out, he actually figured out that and a whole lot more. And why he got canceled. In fact, that's the reason I just went to talk to, Kennedy and Shanahan, because his story is tied to DARPA, but it's also tied to the assassination. It's tied to how science was stolen. Becker is in the generation right after the science is stolen. And the way the science was stolen initially that story starts in 1944, really in 42. That's the Manhattan Project with General Groves and FDR. And General Groves got the idea. Well, let me finish the other story because we're jumping all over the place here.
Right.
So anyway, the GLP-1 drugs get approved by the FDA. So the FDA basically just created a market. This is like preconditioning all of the United States to have this problem with obesity. Now, people will say, there wasn't a huge problem there. But if you listen to like some of the tweets that Bobby puts out, when Fauci got put in 82, what the issue was with obesity, it was nowhere where it is now. But you need to realize that these things actually happened even before Fauci gets in. And then you have federal agencies that are already captured, preconditioning the market. Then you add in blue screen technology, which is what DARPA gives Google. That's Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and the chick that just died from turbo cancer with YouTube. How you know her name, Susan?
Susan, that former CEO.
Yes, she's one of the founders of Google, and you have to realize that Nicole knows all these people. That she was married to Sergey Brin, so many of the things that I'm here literally 2 days after talking to them about all this. They were stunned, and the story with the TED Talk is I basically went up there to tell people that this leptin melanocortin pathway is exactly what the FDA and Big Pharma were up to. And then eventually, because when this talk was canceled, it's 2010, 2011. This is 5 or 6 years after I have my come to Jesus moment at the foot of Michelangelo's statue. So I decide I'm going to, drop this nuclear weapon. Literally within a week, I have the FBI and state medical board, everybody coming after me, and they talk to the people at TED and they pull the TED Talk. The TED Talk was pulled for almost 10 years to bury the story. And you remember, you didn't know anything about GLP-1 drugs.
No.
Well, nobody did until they came out like 4 years ago. And if you don't think this is a big issue, I mean, just look at the 13K from Novo Nordisk. It's $1 trillion drug. So when you begin to realize that light, water, and magnetism, those are the three things that NASA or SETI uses, to try to find life on another planet. Those are the things that are tied to the decentralized network, that life uses on this planet. And the GLP-1 system that they're working with destroys the leptin melanocortin pathway. I consider Becker my mentor because he was the guy who was immediately canceled before me.
Is he still alive, by the way?
No, he's dead. He died in 2009.
Okay.
But I just got finished telling Nicole when I was in Dallas that I actually physically sat down and talked to him about what I'm talking to you about now. And he was the one that told me, he goes, you need to understand what happened to me. He goes, you have to be very careful about who you're getting ready to go against, and which was the industrial military complex. And, you know, this guy was twice nominated for the Nobel Prize. Mm-hmm. And literally he was so frustrated with, you know, a lot of the stuff that I'm sure you have heard in your life as a podcaster that most people think is conspiracy theory, when it turns out it's really not, and it's the truth.
Right.
He got frustrated, and then in 1977, he goes on 60 Minutes and tells the world the problem with non-native EMF. And you have to realize, my friend,
non-native EMF?
Yeah, that's wireless technology.
Right.
It's blue light screens, it's fluorescent bulbs, it's RF, microwaves, the whole shebang. 1977, nobody has a microwave oven. Nobody has a cell phone. And how did this problem with Becker kind of show up? It shows up because the military wanted to build this antenna called Sanguine in a lake in Wisconsin. What was the purpose of the antenna in 73? So they could keep control of all the nuclear subs all over the world. Because right now, before that, they couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. So they were building this thing, and they hired Becker because of the stuff that you had just talked about, that Becker was working on limb regeneration, and he found out that limb regeneration uses the electromagnetic force to do it. In other words, the physics of regeneration is all based on semiconduction. That's the thing that was shocking about him. And how did I come upon his research as a resident at the same time? Why did I know about all this stuff? I'm a neurosurgery resident, and I'm doing a lot of spine reconstructions. Well, bone was the subject of Becker's work. So my mentor in neurosurgery, Dr. David Klein, said, Jack, I want you to do a project on bone regeneration. I want you to use this guy's Becker work, because what he found in 59 through 67 was absolutely shocking. Most people still don't believe that that's how it happens, but I want you to present it to the residents. So that meant I had to go read all his papers. Mm-hmm. So I learned about this. And, you know, most people who listen to this podcast, what I'm about to say won't believe this, but it's axiomatically true. You don't heal bone, ever. Bone regenerates completely. So, for example, if you break your arm right now and you go have surgery, and the orthopedic surgeon opens it up and looks for where your previous break was, there's no scar.
Really?
None. It's one of the few tissues in man where that's the case. You know, most people know about it with the liver. You can cut half a liver out and it'll grow back. But we as mammals, we don't have that ability in a lot of different areas. So what does Becker do? He does a bunch of work to figure out actually how this happens. And it turns out we create a DC electric current in us that actually causes red blood cells in the marrow to de-differentiate. In other words, a red cell becomes a bone cell, and that is what heals the fracture, and it completely regenerates it so that there's no scar. So, of course, he writes all this stuff up. Then he finds out actually how this goes. Like collagen and apatite that are part of bone are actually semiconductive proteins. He does experiments that show bone emits light just like an LED diode. And just remember, this is going down in the 60s, bro. So that's how the military found out about Becker's work.
Right. Okay.
And he was the expert. Like, he was the Anthony Fauci of his time in bone regeneration. He worked in the VA hospital in Syracuse, so he had huge government contracts. He was very, very prolific. So in 73, when the government comes to him, they're like, look, we want to know, will this antenna, since it's going to use RF radiation, does it have any biologic effects for the people in the military or the people that live around it? Becker does the work with guys in his lab, and he finds out it does. He writes a report in 73 to the Secretary of the Navy, and they were stunned with what he found. And he kept writing reports. The next thing he started to notice, that all this stuff in the Federal Register never got published. In other words, the research went in, but it never left DARPA. And no one ever did about it. So what did Becker decide to do? Now, I don't know where you're from or where your family's from, but I'm originally from New York City. At the same time, we have a governor in New York named Hugh Carey. They're trying to get electric power lines go from the city up to Niagara Falls to get more transmission lines. So Becker starts doing some work on these power lines to prove to the military that freaking antenna in Wisconsin's a real problem. And he does something that's, to this day, most people still don't know this. You know, they still think it's conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
That power lines can harm you. But him and Marino, who's the guy that was in his lab, he's a biophysicist, became a lawyer to defend Becker. They did a study on 765 kilowatt towers that are everywhere, even here in Florida.
Cell towers?
Yeah, no, these are remember, there's no cells
Right. Okay. Yeah.
at this time.
Yeah.
These are electric towers for the power grid. They changed the Earth's magnetosphere 80,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. They proved this in 1974, 75, 76. And not only did they rate the military, not only did they give this information to Hugh Carey, they gave it to all the electric power companies, and everybody was just like stunned. Okay? So you have to remember, this guy he's like freaking Joe Montana of science at this time, and no one is listening to him because why? His message is very inconvenient. It's a truth, and it's a time we're retooling our economy from an industrial economy to an information technology. So the power grid's a big deal. The use of non-native EMF, Intel, Microsoft, Google. This is all the precursor stuff at this time. The big company at that time, which you probably know, is IBM. Believe it or not, IBM was already working on liquid crystalline displays that was using a lot of this stuff. And DARPA was involved in that too. So DARPA and the military suck Becker in. They're fueling him until the truth comes out. And what does he do? 1977, he's so frustrated, he gets on 60 Minutes and he tells the world the truth. He tells them exactly what I just told you. When I said it to you, your eyeballs got, really big, because a lot of people, even now, 50 years later, don't realize what he's really found is that all of this shit has biologic effects. I don't care what it is. Like, you put those Apple things in your ear, dude, that's the stupidest thing you could ever do.
I stopped using them a few months ago. I got the wired ones now.
Yeah, that's not good.
The wired ones probably aren't good either,
No,
right?
because you're still getting jump conduction into your ear, which will bring you to my work. My work is the next level of Becker. Like, if Becker had lived, he would have looked for the source of the DC electric current. Well, we found it.
What were you saying was the reason that Susan, the former CEO of YouTube, she had some sort of cancer? You think it had something to do with this?
Well, I don't think. I know.
Okay.
She has a very interesting story. Her mother is named Esther. Esther is known as the grandmother of Silicon Valley. All the kids were tied to her. That's why I said you need to really understand the metrics that we're talking about. And the reason why this is very interesting is because I'm entangled now to people like Nicole and people like Bobby. Bobby didn't know this, but Nicole does, because she was married to Sergey Brin. So when we started talking about this, her and I, obviously when she has a kid with autism, she's a patent attorney for Google. And I tell her, no, I'm not going to help you because you're the person that actually caused the problem. And I have to tell you, I was not a nice guy to her. I mean, brutal to her.
Really?
Oh, yeah. This is like probably a year and a half ago. And she offered me at that time $100 million to build a decentralized research facility with Bukele down in El Salvador. And I told her, I said, bro, hold my beer. I'm not doing this. Why? Because I don't trust you. I know who you were married to. I know things about Google. I know things about what Brin's all about. I know the story, how it's tied to ARPA, DARPA, the internet, how you got the information. And you and your husband are the reason why blue light exists on every screen in this country. And that's what's getting your generation, really sick. That's really where the chronic disease epidemics begin, because that makes it way worse. And when I told her a little bit of the story, I said, do you really know where DARPA, the CIA, and everybody got this information and then studied it? And she said, no. I said, well, I'm going to tell you where Echo's autism comes from. It comes from the Jewish mafia, okay? In the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, the names that you know, Bugsy, which they made a movie about, Mo Dalitz, who's the guy that started Vegas, and the big guy, you're right here in Tampa, so you should know a little bit about Meyer Lansky.
Meyer Lansky, yeah.
Meyer Lansky.
Traficante.
Correct. Well, Traficante
wasn't Jewish, but...
No, but Traficante is really important because of how this ties in to JFK, DARPA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you need to realize what happens is at that time, because I know you know probably a lot of the story. Cuban Revolution happens in 59. Cuba comes in. The Chicago mob, who's friends with the guys in the Jewish mob, through the Capone crime syndicate in Chicago, that was later taken over by, God, what's his name? Sam, I'm blanking on his name.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
But anyway, they go boom in Cuba. They lose a lot of money. Who's the guy that's the accountant for this? It turns out that it's actually Meyer Lansky. And who's the shooter for all this is Traficante, and they're based here in Florida. So when that goes down, Mo, with Johnny Rossetti, who's also part of the Hollywood scene, they get together and Mo says, I got an idea. Let's go build a casino in the desert. Everybody thinks he's crazy at first, okay? So they build Vegas, and it's like, it makes more sense to them to go to a place.
What year was this?
This is 1940s.
Okay.
So
let's
this is
build a casino the same place we're dropping all the nukes.
well, but
great
that,
idea.
Believe it or not, that's where his idea came from. He was like, nobody will ever think that we can create the biggest racket in the world. And for your audience, because I'm a big history guy, and I think you need to know all these bits and pieces because I know we're jumping around. But do you know where the term money laundering comes from?
No.
Comes from Mo Dalitz, comes from Bugsy, comes from Meyer Lansky. What they use, the Jewish mob used laundromats to launder money to skim it to keep it away from the government.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, I think I have heard that before, yeah.
So that's where this came from. And then Mo and Rossetti and Meyer Lansky, they have the reputation that's very different than the Italian mob. The Italian mob is kind of like guys that are going to shoot you up and it's kind of bloody. These guys are much more reserved, okay? And they're like accountants. They really care more about the money in the business being sustainable over a long time. Well, they become very, very successful in the 1940s. So successful that something else is happening in the world that you probably know about. Albert Einstein worked with General Kruse in the Manhattan Project. It's successful, 1945. So in 1948, the Jewish state that was still not made yet offered Albert Einstein to be the first president. And it turns out their military arm, which is known as the Mossad, actually have Lansky and Dalitz. They're their guys in the United States, okay?
Lansky and who?
Lansky and Mo Dalitz.
Really?
They were Mossad agents here in the United States. So what do? They go to Vegas and they realize that there's no regulations. It's the Wild West. They build it from the ground up. Everybody in Chicago and the Italian families are making fun of these Jewish guys doing this because they're not bringing in the bank like these guys are bringing in Cuba. 59 happens, and guess what happens? All the Italian guys get turned off. They're losing millions of dollars, and they're furious. Mm-hmm. So you know they hate Castro. So what do? They have their friends, Mo. Mo has been working for 12, 13 years in the desert. And what does Mo do? He steadily and slowly increases profits. But guess what he does? How does he do it? Does he shoot anybody up or do anything like that? No. The first thing he did is he put one-armed bandits in all the casinos. He blue lit everything. Why? because he paid attention to how people spent money. He realized when you used artificial light, it seemed like people spent more money. So then what's the second thing he does in like 1952, 53? He starts painting all the windows in the casino black.
So you can't see outside.
Can't see outside, and he doesn't want to go outside. Then that's the last thing he does.
Gets rid of the clocks? Is that what he does?
The clocks were gone already.
Okay.
But the best part is then he brings in girls scantily clad, and he starts giving people alcohol while they gamble. And what does he basically do? He creates an army of low dopamine idiots in the desert who they don't have to shoot. They go into their pocket and pay all the money to. So, of course, at this time now, after Groves is out, he gets Truman to change the OSS to the CIA in 47. The CIA knows exactly what Dallas is doing, and they know that they're avoiding taxes. So they decide we need to go find out, is there any science behind any of this stuff? So where are we right now? 48, 51, 52. So you may have heard of this program called MK Ultra.
Once or twice.
Okay. So MK Ultra is the merging of two things. The first thing gets merged is this idea from Dallas that they're going to study it. Then there's another guy who's a 1937 surgeon, SS guy named Kurt Plotkin. Plotkin worked with the Nazis. His idea was mind control through the use of Mexican peyote. So he starts doing his stuff, and the CIA is looking at the effect of light and wireless technology and things like that these guys are using. And they begin to study it. They hire a guy named Sidney Gottlieb. Gottlieb runs the program from 53 through, which we think 64, before, of course, all these things are destroyed. But there's a lot of interesting things that the government finds out that is transferred to DARPA. When does DARPA first form? 1958. So all this information from the CIA and FBI are transferred into DARPA.
Right.
DARPA then takes it the next level. They go and they hire a guy in New Orleans. I told you we'd eventually come back to New Orleans. A guy named Alton Oshner. He's first an FBI asset as a surgeon, but then he becomes a CIA asset because of this issue here. They go and hire a PhD researcher named Delgado, and he's working in the Tulane neurosurgery department and neurology. They get him out of that really quick, and they send him to Mexico, and they start putting wires into the bull's head to find out, can they stop and control the bull using electric signals? Why? Because they already have started to learn about Becker's work. So now this is the idea. Now they're trying to execute. They're trying to use this as a weapon.
Yeah.
Got it?
Right.
So what happens in this whole time, the crazy stories that you've heard Bobby and I talk about on the Tetragrammaton podcast, where Gottlieb basically takes the Air Force plane over St. Louis and drops LSD on the whole city in the mid 1950s to see the effect. They found out mescaline didn't work, so the next step after that was to use LSD. That's one of the famous things that we did find out from the Church Commission that they physically did. So this is what I would tell you is Operation Northwoods, probably negative 2.0, which is when the government thought it was a good idea that they could just do whatever the fuck they wanted to the United States populace, they wouldn't know it, so they didn't need any informed consent. Okay? A lot of people talk about Tuskegee and the airmen and the syphilis. Dude, there's a pattern with the industrial military complex. When they want to do something, they don't even ask for forgiveness. They don't ask for permission either. They just do it. So when they do this and Gottlieb fails, what sight lines are really good for DARPA is this work that Delgado's doing is amazing. So they said, okay, you could do it with wired technology, and they were able to turn the bull off as soon as he was going to spear the matador. They said, let's try to do this wireless. Why? They had all the patents and everything they stole from Tesla. They also had all Marconi's work. At this same time, remember, Motorola is now one of the guys that's the industrial military company. They know that wireless telephony is actually coming. So they decide to employ it here first. So Delgado finds out that actually it does work. You can do it without wires. You don't have to do brain surgery on the animal to do it. And then they asked the next question.
They didn't have to install anything in the brain?
No, they did not. But this was the key step. This is the step where I think your audience, people find it incredulous when I tell them the next step was, could you do this using light and light alone? And it turns out they found out you could. If you use blue light specifically, it actually destroys the dopamine reward tracks in your brain. Just so you know, Meta and Google today own those patents. Remember who's the Google patent attorney? Nicole Shanahan. So I said, Nicole, do you remember all the work you had to do? And she goes, yeah. She goes, I could never figure out what all this was about. Well, you need to know a little bit about Google's history. Google was formed in 1995 when DARPA gave the search algorithm to these two cats from Stanford. You know about Stanford now, right? Mm-hmm. You talked to me about Huberman, why they don't want to talk to me. You started to put two and two together yet?
Yeah.
So the issue is these guys created the internet. They connected all these colleges all over where the academicians were to share this information. So this information is going all around in this area. They basically then figure out and perfect the delivery of blue light technology through screens. Who is the big tech company in the 1950s and 60s that were doing this? Turns out that's IBM. And IBM is working on liquid crystalline displays. And I remember, this is in the 50s and 60s. You as a young man never saw those TVs until the 90s. Mm-hmm. Okay? And then it got a boost from who? Obama, who made the analog to digital transition so that you'd have to use what? LCD screens. And then what else did he do? We're going to ban incandescent bulbs. Why? Because incandescent bulbs not only have fake blue light, but they also have purple and red, which is what you need as the antidote to blue.
They were banned?
Yeah, well, the first ban was from Obama saying, we're going to get rid of these under the guise that they're not energy efficient because they burn too much. You probably remember when you were a little kid, you touched an incandescent bulb, it's hot as shit.
Yeah.
Well, the proxy that they're using to you is, they burn too much energy because they have UV light and red light in it, and that makes heat. So therefore, we should get rid of that, do blue. But you have no idea that DARPA and the government already want blue light everywhere so they can control you with it. That's the real answer behind this whole program. So what happens then?
Well, how do they control us by putting blue light in front of, our worlds are surrounded by these screens and these these phone screens. How do they control us with this light?
I just told you, they control...
By killing us?
No, they control your dopamine reward tracks. In other words, they're dumbing you down. They're making you much more likely to be preconditioned, which brings us to the other person.
We are dopamine slaves for the most part now. Most people.
No, you're the guy that's sitting with Zins right next to you.
I'm asking you if Zins are good. Yeah, I can't go anywhere without my Zins. I'm telling you, it's a problem.
But that's the reason why it's all starting to make sense. I'm trying to bring the picture together for you so you understand it. So the chick you just asked me about, Susan, who started YouTube, who's a Google founder. What you may not know about, you ever hear the marshmallow experiment that was done at Stanford? Mm-mm. When she was a child, remember, she just died, she's 56, okay? So she's a little bit younger than me. Her mother puts her into this program, which is part of the MK Ultra program, to precondition her mind. Every single tech CEO has been in this program, just so you know that. So she goes through it, and she actually performs better than anyone else. In other words, she will follow the rules and be very compliant. Sergey goes through it, and so does Larry Page. So
what's the name of the program?
It's called the Marshmallow Experiment.
The Marshmallow Experiment. Okay.
It was the second generation of the milligram experiment, which you can actually look at. And what I'm trying to explain to you, there's MK Ultra 1.0 that we all found out about when I was a young man. You weren't even born yet. That's through the Church Commission.
Right.
Two things we found out there. Not only that MK Ultra exists, but some of the things we're doing, but we also found out then that the CIA had 400 people in the media that they paid. Dan Rather and Walter Cronkite, right?
Yeah.
Dan Rather and Cronkite being, the key players there. So when you begin to start to see the timeline and all these stories come together, Wojcicki gets the YouTube gig. What is YouTube? YouTube is a screen where you're developing videos. You're addicted to it right now.
That's how I make my living.
That's what addiction is all about. Well, guess what? The other question I want you to ask yourself as a young guy that's supposed to be smart, have you ever asked yourself why it is that every screen comes out blue, that they don't have red? You actually have to put software in to change it?
I got mine set to where like it turns red after like 7 p.m.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Let me look at mine, what it does. That's how it should look.
Whoa. Is that a special app?
Yeah. So you can, we'll talk about it after we finish this. But
okay.
The point that I want to make to you, the question you need to ask yourself, why is it that every tech company has blue lit screens? I'm going to tell you the reason why. It's because that's how DARPA wants it. They want you to be very addicted to the technology so it's sticky. That way you can be programmed further. So, wow. Oh no, it's even more wow than that. You haven't even got to the wow stage. So what happens with this lady, she winds up being compliant, just like she was with YouTube. You want to know why all these people get censored? She did whatever DARPA, whatever the industrial military complex wanted. That's the reason why people were having their shit removed. She gets, the turbo cancer. She dies literally very quickly, within, I think, 6 or 7 months.
Turbo cancer?
Yeah. That's from the SV40 promoter that's in the caps. She gets screwed by the other part of the story we haven't got to yet.
So when did she develop this cancer?
She just died earlier this year.
Yeah, but how long has she had the cancer? Like when did she get diagnosed?
6 months before she died.
She got diagnosed 6 months before she died.
She got stage 4 lung cancer, never smoked. Sounds eerily familiar, doesn't it, to Jack Ruby? Remember how he died?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, so why did I lead this way? Because guess what? I just finished telling the story.
Holy fuck. Steve, pull up the actual documented account of Jack Ruby, how he died.
His name isn't Jack Ruby, just so you know.
Right, I know. It's
Jack Rubenstein,
yes,
and he
exactly.
also is a Mossad agent, just so you know that.
Let's see what the Google machine says about Mr. Rubenstein. Jack Ruby. Type in Jack Ruby. Oh, you can't find his death.
That's not
Obituary.
him. He died right around when Garrison was doing
right when
the trial. The trial.
Jolly West. So after Ruby shot Oswald, Jolly West started visiting him in prison, right?
Yeah. But you know how he got the SV40 though? Wasn't that way. Let me tell you the story so you get it.
Okay.
Because we probably need to jump into the polio story so you understand this part of it.
Search for cancer.
He gets pneumonia while he's in Dallas. He's writing writing the Warren Commission to tell them to get him out of Dallas because he knows Carlos Marcello has got a plan for him. Well, he's going to use the weapon that they created on Magazine Street in New Orleans with Oshner. I just got finished telling this whole story in detail at Dealey Plaza to Bobby and to Nicole and to their administrative team. And I have to tell you, the guy that was filming and his eyeballs nearly melted.
Like they're about to melt.
No, it's a good story, but it's the truth. And the way in which you'll find out that I know the truth, that's going to really blow your mind. But the story of Ruby is interesting. He is in Dallas. He's talking to the Warren Commission, says, you got to get me out of Dallas and get me to D.C. because I know they're going to do something to me. He already knows what's going to happen, but he doesn't know how it's going to happen. So he develops pneumonia in Dallas. All this is discoverable by you and your guy back there. Mm-hmm. So the doctors come in and they give him penicillin flu shots. Turns out in that flu shot was the SV40. He gets stomach cancer and dies like that. Just like your girlfriend from YouTube. And guess what? Why was that been created? That weapon was created by the industrial military complex and Alton Ochsner to get rid of Castro. Okay? And guess who was the front for this whole thing? The mob was involved in this. Most people don't know this, but Carlos Marcello grew up with Lee Harvey Oswald in New Orleans. So he was one of the guys that was working for him, and Oswald was also in the CIA. So if you want to know the part of the story that no one has ever figured out, is why did Oswald was able to go to Russia, come back with carte blanche and never have any problem? Because he needed to be in a communist country so that Castro would allow him to bring this tainted cigar that he was going to smoke, get the SV40 and die. So that should ask the question in your head, Jack, how'd the industrial military complex, the CIA and the FBI all know that this thing was going to kill him that fast? Well, I already told you what happened to Susan. Boom. I already told you what happened to Rubenstein. Boom. Now let's get to the real story. So 1951 comes along, and you know the story about FDR. He's got polio. His lawyer starts the March of Dimes. Kids are sending dimes, nickels, and quarters to Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk makes this vaccine. He gives it to the pharmaceutical companies. There's 4 companies that he gives it to. But the one that you need to remember, because your boy's going to be able to pull it up, it's called Cutter Pharmaceuticals. Turns out, Cutter, Cutter. No doctor ever learns about what I'm about to tell you now. Okay? It's been whitewashed from history. So here's the interesting part. Cutter Pharmaceuticals is in charge of growing this. Remember the date. The date is really important for you to get. 1951. When was DNA discovered, my friend? 1953 by Watson and Crick. So we're in the pre-molecular biology age, okay? Cutter tells all the 4 pharmaceutical companies, tell Salk that his mix is very difficult to grow. So what do? Salk says, I think we need to use a primate that's close to humans. Then we'll have a good culture medium. So what do? They use the African green monkey. Okay. Turns out there's something they didn't know. Here's the good part of the story, and getting ready to step into crazy town. They're able to grow on the African green monkey. They use kidney cells that they grew it on. Okay. They create Salk's, and guess who's the first guy to test it? Dr. Ochsner in New Orleans at the Ochsner Medical Foundation. Things that you need to know about Ochsner. He was a surgeon. He was very famous for being an anti-cancer guy. He used to tell medical students way back when that if this patient has lung cancer, I want you to come and see it because you'll never see another case in your life. That's how rare cancer was in the 1900s to 1920s. That's this guy's reputation. Where you're catching him right now in this part of his life, he's probably in his 60s. He's the dean of Tulane Medical School. He's also the head of surgery after Rudolph Matas, who's a big famous surgeon in New Orleans that people today would know. Something interesting happens right around this time where he loses and gets thrown out. Do you know what it was? 1951, he brings the into the amphitheater, the surgical amphitheater, calls the entire medical staff of Ochsner. He brings his grandson and grandchild in there, and he injects both of them with the Cutter vaccine. His grandson died in 7 days of polio. His granddaughter gets polio in her leg. She doesn't die. Okay? Everybody who's ever trained in New Orleans knows about this story. Now, younger doctors now, they don't learn about it. I was probably the last group of people, late 80s and early 90s. Do you know why? Ochsner was already dead, but you know who was alive? His son. And guess where I did 2 years of my neurosurgery residency, my friend? Ochsner Medical Foundation. Wow. Oh, it gets better. Hold on. So I'm doing my first year of residency, and you know who's filming JFK in the basement of Charity Hospital? Oliver Stone. So it's going down right then and there, and here I am, a dude from New York in the Deep South, seeing all this shitstorm going around me. Do you know who my ER nurse was? Virginia Garrison, Jim Garrison's daughter. This is DA that put Clay Shaw on trial for the assassination of JFK. And no one ever made the links that I'm about to tell you. So I'm sitting there while this whole thing is going on my first year. And Virginia knows that in 2 months I'm getting ready to go to Oshner. And she looks at me and she goes, bro, you better be really careful about what you do when you go there. She goes, because this guy's one of the most nefarious people you'll ever meet. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And she starts telling me some stories about what her dad really knew, because the guy that he wanted to put on trial was Alton Oshner. But they put Clay Shaw on trial. You have to realize something. In this day, putting Alton Oshner in New Orleans on trial would be like putting Fauci on trial in Washington, D.C. right now. You have no chance of telling the story that I'm about to tell you. So remember, Oshner's the first ever National Cancer Institute doctor. I told you he's the anti-cancer doctor. So after he does this to his grandchildren, he then turns around and tells the industrial military complex, because that's who is developing this, that, look, we need to slow our roll down. We need to get this right. We need to fix the problem. So they casually turn all the science over to a doctor named Dr. Bernice Eddy at the NIH. Dr. Eddy does all this work from 51 through 53, 54. DNA gets discovered. And guess what Dr. Eddy finds out? All the original polio that Salk came up with were all tainted with SV40. And no one knew it because DNA hadn't been discovered yet. So she tells everybody in the NIH, she tells everybody in the FDA that this has gone on. And what does the industrial military complex do, my friend? They fucking passed the out to 300 million people in the world, and they created the whole epidemic of cancer. And guess what? Did the industrial military complex allow Bernice Eddy to tell this story to anybody? No. So guess what Bernice Eddy did? She got canceled before Becker, 25 years before that. What did she do? She gave a talk in, I think it was 1955, at the New York Academy of Sciences. And at the end of the talk, she drops the little nugget that I just dropped to you. That, oh, by the way, all the polio viruses were contaminated with SV40. And what SV40 stands for those in your audience who don't know, simian virus 40. So that means there was 39 other viruses that are out there. Okay? What do you need to know, my friend, about SV40? This is the only thing. Take a look at me. I want you to look at me and not that. This is the most important thing of this story.
I'm looking.
The SV40 promoter allows things to get across the nuclear membrane to get into where RNA and DNA is and do bad things. Okay? So, what does the government do? After Eddy announces this to the freaking scientific world, they defund her lab. They take her out of the NIH. She's lost to history. Here's the best part. You go look today at the FDA and NIH website, you'll notice from 51 through 57, you don't see anybody's name. When I tell you this is better than 2024 YouTube cancellation, you find no evidence of the Qatar incident. You know why most doctors don't know about it? Because of what I just told you. So here I am training, I don't know, this is like maybe 27, 30 years after this event. And why do I find out about it? Not because I learned about it in medical school, because Virginia Garrison told me what went down. And then what did I do? I went to the medical school library and started pulling stories up. Then I went even further. I went to talk to Alton Oshner's son, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon who happens to do surgery with us when we used to clip aneurysms. When we used to clip aneurysms, we'd open the head, but we'd have to stop the heart to clip them. That's how long ago I've been a neurosurgeon. We don't do it like that anymore. Shit. So in one of those cases, it was a basilar tip aneurysm. J.O.'s open in the chest with one of his other doctors named Keith Van Meter. And J.O.'s sitting there. And I just casually tell my neurosurgery mentor at the time, I said, I'm going to ask him about all this. And he goes, bro, I don't know if you really want to go there. But now, here comes the part of the story that you're really going to shit the bed on.
So I said, shit left.
I said, J.O., I said, is it true what happened with your niece and nephew about, the polio vaccine? He goes, and this is the crazy thing. This guy was a real chatty guy. I thought he would shut me down. Bro, he started talking to me for almost an hour and a half, 2 hours. And once he opened up about that, then I went for the nuclear weapon. And I mean this literally and figuratively. I said, J.O., tell me, why is it that we have a nuclear device in the basement of a community hospital? It's called a LINAC. And who uses that? LINACs are used to treat brain tumors. I said, I know you guys have done really well here. I said, but that's $100 million piece of equipment. And I said, we can barely get new instruments to do spine surgery in this hospital.
What? So for people who are uninitiated,
I'm gonna go there. Okay. Just I'm trying to give you the punch in the mouth so you understand where we're going. So this is a device that is an electromagnetic device that delivers radiation from gamma rays all the way to RF radiation. You can just turn it down. No place outside of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has these devices at this time. So when I was a first-year resident and I walk over to Ochsner and I see a LINAC laying down on its side and it looks like a nuclear weapon, I'm going, where in the fuck did we get the money for this? It's cool. Most doctors say, oh, well, we have cutting edge stuff. We can treat brain tumors and this and that. But that's not where I was going with it. I was like, where'd this come from? So in this talk that I had with J.O., I had already been preconditioned by several of the people from the JFK movie and from Virginia Garrison herself. And when she told me, she goes, there's more to this story that nobody knows that won't be in that movie that they're filming downstairs. So she was really good about going to St. Charles Tavern and talking, especially when we came off a shift. And I got her a little loaded. And she started telling me about this polio virus and monkeys and this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, well, I do know that we do a lot of monkey research at LSU. Because remember, I'm an LSU resident, and we did have a monkey lab. And I was like, wow. And I knew Tulane had a monkey lab. Mm-hmm. So I'm starting to ask a lot of questions now. And what I find out is that Ochsner was that when this went down with his grandchildren and this Bernice Eddy thing, this is a very short period of time, 3-year history. He goes from being an FBI asset to a CIA asset. Then the CIA, they ask him specifically, we want you to fix this SV40 problem. So what does he do? He goes out and he hires the world expert in viruses and oncology. Her name is Dr. Sarah Stewart. She trained University of Chicago. You know where else is in the University of Chicago, right? That's where the nuclear program begins. That's the Fermi Research Lab.
Oh, okay.
She gets her compatriot, who's a classmate, Dr. Mary Sherman, who's an orthopedic surgeon, who's an expert in bone cancer. He hires both of them. Guess what magically happens? Sarah Stewart is based at the U.S. Public Health Hospital in New Orleans at this time by the military. Mary Sherman is a staff doctor at Ochsner Medical Foundation running the game here. They set up a bioweapons lab, the first of its kind, on Magazine Street in an apartment. And guess who the 3 people there are running it? A young girl who won a science project when she was in Florida. She actually is from Florida. Her name's Judith Very Baker. She was very interested in Sarah Stewart's work. And when she won this thing, Ochsner pulled her and said, you're going to be the lab technician. She was promised a medical school education and a residency if she worked under Mary Sherman. Who else is in this motley crew? David Ferry. We'll talk about him in a bit. Who's the other person? Lee Harvey Oswald. So guess what Lee Harvey Oswald, Judith Ferry Baker, and David Ferry are doing? They are running the bioweapons lab.
What year again?
This is 1962, 63, right before they killed Kennedy. So what's happening? Because remember, Ochsner, how did he make all his money? So how did he get tied up in this whole thing? So you understand. When I was a resident, he had this nice community hospital. It wasn't huge, but it's nice. Now it's a massive place. But out in front of it, he had all the flags for all the dictators that ran Central and South America. He used to take care of all of them. They were all right-wing dictators. He was a right-wing politician. That's the reason the people at Tulane University threw him out of being the dean and the head of surgery at Tulane. So what did he do? Instead of getting pissed off, he said, fuck it, I'm just going to go open my own hospital to compete against you. So that's what he does. So how does he make it successful? He starts working with right-wing politics. All these people come, and he becomes enriched by this. The military is obviously very interested in this because they're the people that overthrow these governments down there. That's why he was an FBI asset. Wow. But when this shit hits with SV40, the CIA says to him, you need to fix this.
And so what do you mean by fix it?
Meaning the government knows that they just started the war on cancer. Like they gave the world cancer at record rates overnight.
Did they know this was going to happen?
Absolutely, because guess who told them? Sarah Stewart.
Okay.
She was the world expert that worked for the government. And when she heard what they did, she said, you need to hire Mary Sherman. You need to put both of us on this project, and we need to do this in clandestine fashion. In fact, the day that David Ferrie gets killed, Sarah Stewart's lab book was found by Jim Garrison. This is a very interesting story, my friend. Now you can start to see why this is all really intertwined.
So what did they mean when they said you need to fix the SV40 problem?
Meaning there has to be something that you can get that out of the genetic code.
Okay.
So what do? The CIA goes straight to the delegation in the United States Senate that controlled money at that time. Do you know who all of them were? All the people in Louisiana. How do you like that? This is Huey P. Long's son, who's a state senator. Hale Boggs, remember he was on the Warren Commission?
Yep.
Hale Boggs is the head of the Appropriations Committee. So magically, Ochsner gets a Linac delivered to the U.S. Public Health Hospital that's across the street from Children's Hospital on Henry Clay Boulevard. And it's standing up in a building that is only 3 stories from the street, but it goes 3 stories down in the ground. And this thing is standing up like you would see a nuclear weapon like in the Planet of the Apes, the first version.
Yeah.
There's 6 targets that are pointing at the Linac, okay? They start using small little mammals with the polio virus injected, and they start zapping it with all different levels of radiation to see if they can eradicate it. Mm-hmm. This should not sound crazy to you because that's exactly what oncologists do today, right, to tumors? Mm-hmm. But guess where the problem lies? What did the oncologist, what did Sarah Stewart and Mary Stewart and the Motley Crew find? The more they irradiate it, the more lethal the SV40 became. In other words, it caused unbelievable cancer, and it happened like that. So these tests kept going on. And then what happens? 1959. Castro comes in. And you know that the FBI and the CIA, all that stuff that you've already talked with Ian Carroll about, and, well, who's the other guy? Martyr Maid, Yeah,
I haven't talked to him.
But that dude, he's the academic historian, and the other guy is like, I would call the conspiracy theorist.
Ian? Yeah.
Right, Ian.
Yeah.
But he's not really a conspiracy theorist. A lot of what he believes is right, but this whole thing, nobody knows about what I'm telling you right now and how these things link. Because, I even said to Bobby in the Tetragrammaton podcast, I said, what's the difference between fact and fiction? Fiction has to make sense. The story that I'm telling you right now, because I can see in your face, you're like, dude, this is the craziest story ever.
I've never heard any of this stuff before.
No, you won't, because I told you. Do you think the YouTube stuff that you're going through now is bad? Do you think what, the World Economic Forum and what Fauci's done is bad? Bro, you have no fucking idea. Because I know this story. I lived it. It was in the beginning of my residency. And I asked questions. That's all I did. I want to know why we had a Linac. I want to know what's going on in this polio story. And then I said, I want to know why the primate lab was moved from LSU and Tulane, and now it's sitting across the lake in Cummington, Louisiana. Well, I got the answer through this story. Now I know the reason why. So what happens is Mary Sherman is radiating the fuck out of these mice. They would bring the mice to Judith Ferry Baker, who would homogenize it with Ferry and Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald was just the runner, going back and forth. And they had to have a front for him and Judith Ferry Baker. What was the front? They worked on the coffee factory on Canal Boulevard. So just so you know, did I do my homework on this? I had Judith Ferry Baker at my house on July 4th, 2020, with the freaking receipts of them two working together. It's published in her book, but I didn't believe her. I said, yeah. They were working together, and he was an asset in this program. Why? Because he was going to be the one to deliver this bioweapon in a cigar to Castro. That's the reason he went to Russia. So who's David Ferry in all this thing? David Ferry is a disgraced Eastern Airline pilot who was involved with the mafia training the people for the Bay of Pigs. He was here in Florida, and he was in Lake Pontchartrain. There's pictures of David Ferry and Oswald in Lake Pontchartrain everywhere in New Orleans, but you guys don't know about it because it was buried by, guess who? The Warren Commission, the FBI,
right?
The people that didn't want this story out. The only person that's still alive from this whole story is Judith Ferry Baker. She's like in her 80s.
Wow.
But she's written a book about it, and I can tell you that there was parts of the book that I knew about it. There was things that I knew she didn't know. And there was something, this is really important. There was something that I knew Bobby Kennedy, if I told him, he would know that I wasn't full of shit. And that's kind of why I did the podcast with Rick Rubin and him. And when I told him, his eyeballs told me all I needed to know. So when this project starts, they find out that this thing can't be fixed. In fact, they just made the most
SV-40.
Right. They just made the most lethal bioweapon on the planet. So what does the industrial military complex do? What anybody does now with, bad things. Let's take it as an opportunity. So they develop it. And that's where they come with the idea to take Castro out. Because at that time, the deal was we're either going to take Castro out or we're going to take JFK out. Why was the JFK thing a big deal? JFK not giving air cover to the industrial military complex for the Bay of Pigs really was a huge big deal.
Yep.
And there was a lot of people like David Ferry. If you read the book about him, dude, he hated Kennedy because all those guys, all those Cuban exiles that he was training with Oswald, they were all captured or killed. So, and he was actually a pilot in the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1962.
I interviewed one of them not too long ago.
There you go.
Felix Rodriguez.
So what happens is that Oswald never wanted to kill Kennedy. He knew that what the situation was. If they didn't get Castro, they were going to have to do Kennedy, which goes to the beginning of this podcast. Do you know the reason why Castro always stayed a step ahead of the CIA and FBI? Trafficante was a double agent. And guess how? So this is where the story of the mob that very few people have put together. At that time, I just told you that the casinos go boom.
Yes.
So they lost a lot of their money.
Right.
Mo Dalitz is kicking ass and taking names in Vegas. So the Chicago bosses, I'm still blanking on his name. Sam, it begins with a C. His nickname used to be Momo. That'll show you. You may
find it. Yes, find him, Steve. Sam Momo, Chicago.
Yeah. Well, he's friends with Carlos Marsalo. Marsalo controls both Florida and New Orleans. Trafficante starts doing deals with Castro. They started running all the drugs through
Giancana.
There you go. Sam Giancana. I just couldn't remember the name. And he starts running drugs through Florida, and guess what? The Italian mob finds out that this is more profitable than casinos. So the reason why this goes down is he cuts a deal with Castro that I'll feed you any information I get about you, but you keep letting us run the drugs through New Orleans and Florida. So that's where the mob gets involved with drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in the CIA, FBI knows really why this is going on. So Castro was never able to be killed. I think the CIA is on record saying they tried to kill him 7, 8, 9 times.
Right.
They were always unsuccessful because of the link I just told you. So what happens next? They go, and this is the best part of the story. This is the part of the story that really exonerates Lee Harvey Oswald, but the industrial military complex will never allow you to know it. They have to test the weapon. Oshner knows that he has to test the weapon, so he goes to Angola prison, the same prison Johnny Cash is famous for going to singing. They find a guy on death row. They tell him they're going to inject him with something, but they tell him, you're going to die anyway, whether it be by the gas chamber or electrocution or here, but we'll give your family money. The guy actually agrees to do it. They transfer him to Angola, to a small little prison in Clinton, Louisiana, and you'll know why I know all this stuff. And who drives up the bioweapon? They don't let Judith Vary Baker do it. They actually give it David Ferry, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Clay Shaw are in the car. Do you want to know why they put Clay Shaw on trial? Because he was seen in Clinton, Louisiana, which at the time in 1963 was a very black town. These are 3 white guys in a black Cadillac. This is the same day that Martin Luther King gives his I Have a Dream speech. And why is this a big deal in Clinton? Because they're registering black people to vote. And guess who registers to vote that day in Clinton, Louisiana? Lee Harvey Oswald. You'll be able to find it. So guess what happens? This is how Garrison knew that Clay Shaw was going there. He didn't know what he was going to do, but he had an idea. So they go up to the prison. They inject the prisoner. He's dead within 10 days of cancer. So they get a positive on that. Guess what happens? Judith Vary Baker finds out what they did through Oswald, and she goes fucking ballistic. She goes back and tells Oshner. Oshner threatens her, says, you're no longer going to medical school.
Who's Oshner again?
Oshner's the guy, the doctor that started this whole process.
Okay.
The polio guy, the guy that injected his kids.
Oh, yes, his grandkids.
So he gets furious. She runs back to Florida. What magically happens next? Oswald tries the attempt to go to Cuba to deliver the cigar. He's unsuccessful. Literally.
Is this when he went to Mexico City and tried to get to Cuba?
Cuba, correct.
Yeah, oh, my God.
That's exactly right, bro. You're putting the dots together. I figured that you would once you hear all this. But here's the funny part of the story. When he fails, he tells Judith Vary Baker on the phone, which you can read about in her book, he says, they're going to kill Kennedy, and I'm going to be the patsy. So the first attempt on JFK's life, believe it or not, is actually in Chicago. Guess who foils it? Lee Harvey Oswald with a phone call to the cops. Tips them off, and they can't kill him.
They try to kill him here in Tampa, too.
Right. But this is a month before they kill him in Dallas.
Yes.
So in Dallas, what happens then, you know, the famous meeting between H.L. Hunt, Clint Murchison, Nixon, the Bush family, everybody's in this hotel, in the Marriott Hotel. That story gets told by LBJ's, you know, piece of ass on the side. Mm-hmm. That got told, I think that got told in like 2008, 2009. I actually knew about that because that was some of the juice that was dripped out to me in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And the reason it was important in New Orleans politics is because Lady Bird Johnson, again, this is how I fact checked it to know it wasn't bullshit. Clint Murchison, who's the first owner of the Dallas Cowboys, is an oilman. Him and Lady Bird Johnson bought all the real estate from Dallas to New Orleans because I-10 was built in the 50s when Nixon was the vice president. So Nixon told them where the road was going to go, and that's how they got tons of money. So when I fact checked that, I was like, okay, this now is definitely plausible how all these people are tied together. Then the final thing that I did after my residency's over, the U.S. Public Health Hospital gets decommissioned. And I knew that when all this shit was going on with COVID, I said, I need to go back down there and check the public health hospital out. I was fortunate because the same janitor that was there when I was a resident at Henry Clay Boulevard, he knew who I was. And I said, I see they're renovating the building. I said, do you think I can get in there? He goes, dude, nobody's used that in years. He goes, it's kind of empty. And I said, you remember the machine that was in there? I said, do you know where it went? He goes, no one ever told us this and that. Oh, the same machine is in the basement of Oshner. That's what happened. And it was retooled by a technician so that it would lay down so we could use it for cancer patients.
Wow.
So how did I know the weapon was there? Two things. The first way I walked in, I found out there was 3 stories below the ground that you can never see. Mm-hmm. The thing that always was very unusual about this hospital, it has a huge wall. The wall's about 15 feet tall, like you would see around a base. And it didn't make any sense to me. It had these big, huge metal doors because they didn't want anybody in there. But the most remarkable thing about this, when I got to the basement, when I saw the 6 concrete stanchions that were there, massive grounding plates. The grounding plate, the wall behind you from where that exit sign is to that corner was that big and probably 5 feet taller. And there's 2 of these in there with massive electric power lines going in there. I knew what it was right away. It was the grounding metal for the Linac because you have something that make 30 million volts. So you have to have something to, get rid of it.
Yeah.
So then it dawned on me, wait a minute. I know another way that I can prove that this shit was going on back in the 50s and 60s. I went to Entergy. Entergy is the electric power company in New Orleans. They have nuclear power plants, this and that. So I walked in there and I said, can I see the bills for the U.S. Public Health Hospital, for these times? They're all covered by redaction and government stuff. So I knew right away that I was right at ground zero when this happens. Now, just when you think the story's over, 6 months after JFK gets killed, David Ferrie gets killed. Okay?
Wow.
Jim Garrison.
How did he die?
No one knows. So this is how I got Bobby entangled into this. I'm talking about RFK Jr. So I would have no way of knowing this, okay, what I'm about to tell you. It's very public that Jim Garrison was at the crime scene because he was the DA in New Orleans. Ferrie is found dead. He kept telling everybody in the French Quarter that he was going to die when JFK got killed. Why? Because he knew. He told everybody they had to kill Lee Harvey Oswald because Marcello was linked to him. He was a key. Ruby was the guy to do it. Then they took Ruby out as well. So you could see everybody's dropping. So Judith was back in Florida. They couldn't find it. The only person who knew who she was Trafficante. And everybody thought for sure Trafficante would get her, but he never did. And what happens with Ferrie, at his death scene, Bobby Kennedy Sr. calls on the phone. Or I should say, Jim Garrison calls Bobby Kennedy Sr. Because Kennedy Sr. and Garrison are talking. Why? Because Garrison knows that there's a conspiracy to kill JFK that began in New Orleans. And he knows that Lee Harvey Oswald's got nothing to do with it. He knows that Oshner, Clay Shaw, he's putting pieces together. Okay? The CIA, the FBI, they're bugging his office. So they knew he was getting close. That's why they try to make him look like a clown show. But this is the key point. When Garrison calls Bobby Kennedy Sr. to tell him about what he found, guess who answers the phone? Bobby Kennedy Jr. Guess who knew that? Me. And I told Bobby that in the Tetragrammaton podcast. I'd have no way of knowing that. Whoa. So that's how he knew that I wasn't a tinfoil cap guy. I put this whole thing together. And I knew, dude, I knew about this from the beginning of my residency, and that's part of the reason that I went to talk to Becker, because I knew his part of the story was tied to this part of the story. And this is before COVID, but it's also now explains to you why I didn't trust anybody during COVID. When I saw there was 2 legal definitions, I knew that Pfizer was going to use the SV40 promoter, but I had no way to prove it, my friend. None. Because, I'm not a molecular biologist anymore. I can't do those things. I'm not doing research. I'm in clinical practice. But I knew what these motherfuckers were capable of. And when I saw that, I was like, okay. Then the 2020 version of Bernice Eddy comes to the scene. This is a guy you really should interview on your podcast. His name is Kevin McKiernan. You know anything about him?
Kevin McKiernan?
Yes.
No, I never heard of him.
You need to write his name down because this guy, to me, is an absolute patriot and hero. So, Kevin, you need to know a little about his backstory because guess what? It ties to the Google boys and it ties to DARPA. Remember Craig Ventnor? Human Genome Project?
Yes.
Clinton administration?
Yep.
Told everybody humans are going to have 100,000 genes. Chimps and monkeys will have 25,000 because we're so better than them. That blows up in his face. He's a transhumanist, just like the guys at Google, just like Wojcicki, just like everybody in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So
the transhumanist thing is bizarre.
No, it's not. It actually makes total sense, dude. These are all people who have been through the marshmallow experiment, bro. They're all been zapped by the industrial military complex. We ain't done yet. Take a drink of your liquid death there.
I need that. I need one of these. So the transhumanist thing, I always thought it was a scam.
No. Oh,
Because
no. It's actually evidence. It's evidence of MK Ultra 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. But guess what MK Ultra is called today? Do you know? Any of your conspiracy boys ever tell you?
I have no clue.
Brain Health Initiative set forth in 2013 by President Obama. Do you know where it's based? In Central and South America. Isn't that funny that it's in the same places where you can't find it? And do you know where it's hidden in? Places called Centers of Excellence. How do you know that I'm right? Do you remember the story I told you about Sidney Gottlieb before? In MK Ultra 1.0, when he took LSD and dripped it down on St. Louis? Do you know who sponsored that experiment? Washington University and the U.S. Navy. That's also discoverable. Do you know where Washington University is?
Washington?
St. Louis. It's a major medical school in St. Louis. They were part of it. Do you know who sponsored the Brain Health Initiative? Washington University and the U.S. Navy. How do you like that?
Did you put this together by yourself?
Yep. Bro.
No one else is talking about this?
Just so you understand why. What do doctors do? Especially good doctors, they're diagnosticians. They take a mystery and a patient to try to figure out what's going on. This mystery, I've been picking up clues and breadcrumbs for 30 years of my medical training. And I don't fucking forget anything, bro. You see, I'm doing this all from my memory right here. Do I have any notes in front of me?
No.
And the only thing I blanked on was the dude's name from Chicago.
Right.
So, this story isn't finished yet. So the Brain Health Initiative comes in. This stuff is being done in places right now. Many of the things that you're seeing in the transhumanist movement is actually being done. So now you may start to understand why we have an open border. All the people that have been through these training programs in Central and South America are being let into the United States and they're being deployed in very specific cities. So you want to know why Springfield, Ohio has who they have there? Do you want to know the reason why people are being brought into Alabama? There's a reason, my friend. Do you understand the game that's going on?
Why are they specifically bringing people into Springfield, Ohio, and Aurora, Colorado, and all this stuff? Like, what's the significance of those places?
What would a transhumanist do? Does a transhumanist really have any care about the people that are here, or do they want their people that are easily controllable in? Like, did Sujin Wojcicki?
Wait.
Does she care?
My definition. I thought the transhumanists were just were people who were going to get their brains frozen after they died.
No, they're more than that, my friend. They're the same people like Bill Gates' dad. They're eugenists. They want to trim everybody They're not interested. Like if you sat down and talked to Nicole, she will tell you stories. But the reason I'm paying attention to this is you need to realize I pay attention to all of the families of the big Silicon Valley people. Why? Because they are all tied to MK Ultra 4.0, 5.0. Every single one of them. And there's a reason they follow the rules of the industrial military complex, because they're designed to do that. Okay? And guess what? They get that training at the universities that they went. Stanford, Harvard. Just remember where all these people come from, my friend. Name any of them.
Is this why you moved out of the country?
Pretty much. And look, I've been saving this for 30 years. And I believe we're in the ninth inning. But here's my problem. 55% of the United States population has been MK Ultra'd through the screen technology. So they're all obedient idiots. So here's my position. This goes very proximal to what Ayn Rand wrote in Atlas Shrugged. If we ever get to a point where it's mob rules, which is exactly why the Democrats always say democracy and not constitutional republic, bro, this is the problem. The only way to ensure the next step of the plan, because what is the real story of COVID? COVID is not what any of you think. It's a compliance test for a coming economic reset. So remember I told you earlier that the industrial military complex, its energy, the source is cheap money. Cheap money is how they fuel all of these things. So parts of the story that we glanced over that I'm going to tell you that I actually told Dr. Alexis, these parts are really going to infuriate you. So I told you how we got the money laundering thing through drugs and how it started with Castro and Trafficante. What if I tell you that the war on drugs part 2 started with the Iran-Contra affair with Ronald Reagan and Oliver North? The story that you've believed as a young boy was that it was about running guns to Nicaragua. What if I told you it wasn't that at all? It was to make sure that the industrial military complex captured the pathway between the Colombian drug cartel and the Mexican cartel so that they could deliver opiates right into the United States.
Fun black ops.
Right. And that's exactly what Iran-Contra was all about. It's another pile of money. Okay? So...
Are you familiar with Danny Sheehan?
No.
Harvard lawyer who he was he worked on the Iran-Contra case, the Pentagon Papers case, the Watergate case, all these cases. He came in here and basically elucidated all this stuff beautifully. But he's how I got my education in this.
All right. Well, perfect. Then I don't have to go through it again.
No. Keith. I don't mean to interrupt, but I just wondering.
I just want you to understand what the goal was. It was to create a pile of money. So what has the government done? First, Social Security they stole. Okay. Then you have Iran-Contra. You know when that one goes down. That's another pile of money that they start the war on drugs. The government is fueling this because they need the money to run black ops.
Right.
Here's the big one. Who gets hired in 1982, my friend, and at the same time? Anthony Fauci.
Okay.
By Reagan. What else happens right then and there at that time? You might remember somebody in the industrial military complex came up with the idea, how about we have Americans donate and to their own retirement called the Roth or SEP IRA. So we can create this huge pile of money that the Treasury and the Fed will watch, which has never been audited to this day. So what did they do? They came up with another plan through Congress so that now Americans put all their retirement money in, so they're able to launder that money too. So all this money is sitting in there. No one's able to audit it. So fast forward, I don't know, 20 years ago, you heard about a guy named Bernie Madoff, right? You know about what he did. How did he get outed? The owner of the New York Mets at the time, Nelson Doubleday, put some of his money in there, and he asked for it back when he was going through financial hardship, and that's what took Bernie Madoff down. Bernie gets thrown into jail, but guess what also happens? The government realizes as soon as Madoff goes down, if anybody starts asking for money back, they're going to have a problem. So how old are you?
30. I just turned 37.
Beautiful. So I want you to think about your mom and dad. They're boomers like me. Who is going to be all these people that opened up Roth IRAs starting to retire right about now? What happens when you taper a Ponzi scheme and people start taking their money out?
Collapses.
Have you ever looked at the rules for a Roth? Oh, you don't have to take it all out all at once. Just take a little bit at a time. We'll let you go all the way to 70. So go look at the years the boomers were built. The last year is 64. So
you're saying the boomers are
hold on. Okay. Let me finish.
Okay.
I'm developing this idea for you. So in Bitcoin, we have guys like Max Kaiser. We have the big Bitcoiners. They always say, Lawrence Lepard, you cannot taper a Ponzi scheme. Why? Because when people want their money back, it causes the house of cards to collapse.
Yes.
What if I told you that the industrial military complex figured out how to taper a Ponzi scheme? You're slowly going to take people out who were complied, so you don't have to pay them back, bro. And guess what? Why does it make sense? What do you know about U.S. tax law? When people die that have a lot of money in a Roth or an IRA, don't they have to pay estate tax, 55%? So who's getting the gravy? The government's getting that money back, bro. So guess what? Do you understand now why we started this podcast with Susan and the turbo cancer? And yet I took you back 50 years and showed it to you in Jack Rubenstein. And what's happening now that Kevin McKiernan has proven? Kevin McKiernan does the test, takes unopened expired vials and tests and finds SV40 in a jab 50 years after the polio massacre. Do you understand, bro, what's really going on? Because let me tell you something. I'm teaching you right now about the Dunning-Kruger effect. When what you don't know turns out to be the most important part of the story, everything you thought you knew goes. So, my friend, that's the real reason why I went to Dallas 2 days ago and spoke at Dealey Plaza and laid this whole story out on tape and told everything I know in every detail. Because if I happen to get taken out by acute lead toxicity, I want a young guy like you who's doing this podcast to make sure you go fucking fact check Uncle Jack. But I promise you, I'm not going to let you down. Every single one of you out there needs to know what I'm talking about. These are the biggest fucking criminals in the world. They make Adolf Hitler look like a street gangster. They've killed way more than 4 million people, and they're not done. They're looking to completely take out millions of people slowly over time, all different kinds of ways. So don't think it's over. What did Fauci and the Bi-Dolac and the vaccine law really do? Gave them the most impressive bioweapon ever, and no one in the legal profession can sue them because they have immunity.
Right.
Got it?
Right. Yeah.
Understand where we're going now, bro?
Oh, yeah.
Feeling it?
I don't want to believe it. It's fucking terrifying.
Well, guess what? That's
I want you to be wrong.
But guess what? This is a guy that does podcasts that talk about conspiracies, and all of a sudden, when you start to realize that all the conspiracies that you've done your homework with other guests, but when the dude comes in here and puts it all together, and you sit there and you go, what did I say to you in this podcast? Like, he needs to make a clip of this. What's the difference between fact and fiction? Fiction has to make sense. There ain't nothing about this that makes sense. Right, yeah. But guess what?
That's totally right. You're totally right about that.
Every single thing that I told you, you can now fact check. Do you think that was true when this started out for me in 88, 89, 90, 91, 92? Nope. When did I know I was right?
Right.
Dude, this program ain't going away. And I've already told you where they're being tested now. Remember the black guy that was on death row in Clinton, Louisiana? Now it's all people with brown skin that are in Central and South America. That's what the Brain Health Initiative is all about. See, that's the execution part of the plan. And then they're creating a military to bring them up to the United States now. So that you're having all these crazy bastards that have been programmed now led into the United States and made citizens. Guess why? Not only the replacement for you, which a lot of the black folks are starting to wake up to, but they're going to be controllable replacements. This plan has been in since Tavistock in 1921.
That doesn't make sense.
Oh, yes, it does.
Why would you want, if you're a country, why would you want to do that to your population? The biggest thing
because
that
our Constitution for tyranny, treason, death. If you know about this, and that Constitution is in law, what is the goal of the industrial military complex? You want me to distill this down for you so it lands? They want to replace the U.S. Constitution with the UN Charter. That's what they want to do.
Right.
Because then they have free reign. Do you know who went through the Marshmallow program? Sergey Brin's first wife. Do you know what she does? Epic. That's the electronic medical record of the whole system, so they know. Do you know who runs 23andMe?
Is it the CIA?
No. Sergey Brin's ex-wife. This is, just so you know, the girl that...
Not Nicole.
No. The girl that your guy just pulled up, Susan?
Yes.
Her sister runs 23andMe. How you like that?
I don't like that. That's crazy.
Well, guess what I'm trying to tell you? They have the data. They're the data collection. Remember I told you that these kids that run these programs, all of them are being controlled by the industrial military complex. Dude, this has been planned all the way from when General Groves left in 1947. You know what his parting gift was? Turning the OSS into the CIA. They've been working with General Groves when he's outside the government. And do you know why he was forced outside the government? Because Eisenhower hated his guts. And what did he do? He formed a militia outside the military, and they got powerful. So powerful that they got all these companies in Texas, Illinois, and California to work as part of the industrial military complex. And the government kept paying them and had no idea what Groves was really doing. And if you don't think Groves was a smart guy, just remember, 1942 to 1945, he takes Operation Paperclip. Allen Dulles, sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Goes and harvests the best scientists in the world, brings them to the desert, and they make a fucking bomb in 3 years that nobody could believe. Guess what? So if you think that they couldn't do something like this, they made the atomic bomb in 3 years, bro.
Right.
That's how fucking talented these people are, and that's how smart they are. Mm. And everybody who works there, these are not stupid people. They have an army that they've trained, and that army is based in big tech. And they are carrying out these attacks constantly on the American people. And you guys keep drinking Starbucks coffee, watching Netflix, and getting dumber by the minute because your dopamine levels are getting destroyed. And you don't put it together. But dude, I'm laying it out for you. I mean, it's all there in front of you.
But like, this is my biggest thing. I understand what you're saying. I understand that the government wants people to be controllable. That makes sense to me.
That's why kids go to school for 8 hours a day. And now we irradiate them with Wi-Fi.
Right. But what I don't understand is, why do you want your population to be obese and basically physically useless?
Because it makes it easier to kill them.
But if you want to maintain...
They're all owed money.
If you want to...
They're all owed money that they stole already. You still haven't got it, that the story always comes back to money.
You're talking about the IRAs.
Dude, I'm talking about everything. We're 30. Look, I don't know if you know this. Yesterday, I'm trying to remember what his name is. I'm probably going to, James Lavish. It's got a tweet out there. Yesterday, we crossed the Rubicon of $35.3 trillion. Just so you know something, listen to this. If we were to pay back $1 million every second, it would take 4,023 years to pay back that money. So let me ask you a question. When you see a lavish tweet like that, and you think about where we are, how the fuck do you solve that problem, dude? Got it?
No, I got it. It makes sense what you're saying. I totally get it.
Well, I know it makes sense, dude. I'm a brain surgeon. I'm not a dumbass. But what I'm telling you...
But I am, and it makes sense to me.
No, but you're not a dumbass, because I'm going to tell you why. You've been nibbling at this problem so many different ways. You're like a great white shark on this whale, and you keep biting at it. You keep bringing all these people in here. You know the bits and pieces. What am I doing? I'm giving you the final touches on the sculpture. So guess what? I need you to realize that you got to keep doing what you're doing. Like, you now are the media. Let me explain to you why the media is gone. The media is gone because of General Kruse. Let me tell you exactly what their plan was. They decided to abscond big science. Their plan eventually was to use big pharma money to start do advertising on the media. So what did they do? They made them all employees. Do you know how they came up with that idea first? They did the same thing to doctors in the 1980s. That's the reason why HMOs came up. Because what do? They put the government between us and our patients. They did the same thing with the media. And they did it 30 years before. Bro, these people are brilliant, Danny. I'm telling you, they really are. And the thing is, all I'm doing with you guys today, coming in here straight from off the plane, so I'm putting some Windex on your glass eyes. That's all I'm doing. And I want you to understand truly what your world is all about, because you said you got kids. I don't know the cat behind the screen back there. That's what I'm saying. And I want you guys to understand that I don't want you to be bullshitted anymore. Like I always tell people, a half truth always leads to a full lie. Like all the people that you've had in here, they didn't know bits and pieces of the story. But you know why? It was by design. The industrial military complex cannot let you know all this stuff. Because if you knew it, you would fucking take them out in a minute. These people are more nefarious than King George was in 1774.
Right. That's what I'm afraid of.
They're making Hitler look like, a gangster. I got news for you, bro. These people are bad. Like, really bad.
The information that you're letting out right now is enough to melt anybody's brain. It's insane. It's literally sounds insane. And that's quite literally what the military industrial complex and organizations like DARPA have been doing since the 50s, is things that are completely wacky and insane, like MK Ultra. And the things they were doing at the Haight-Ashbury Clinic with these experiments with LSD and amphetamines, and with Charles Manson. I don't know if you're familiar with Tom O'Neill. He wrote a book on this.
Actually, somebody from Twitter, after you announced that I was coming on your podcast, somebody said I need to do a podcast with Tom O'Neill. He said, you guys would be... Oh my
God, he's amazing.
Yeah. He said, you guys would be right up each other's alley. But no, this is the crazy part of my story. I don't know these people that you have had on, but the part that ties all this together is how General Kruse stole big science and how it links to everything else, because it ties everything together. And what am I trying to point your audience to? It's money that the problem is.
Right.
They need that cheap money to continue to go on and on and on, and they need the government to continue to provide it. That's the reason the CBDC, look, American money's failing. And they knew it was going to fail from when Nixon did the Nixon shock in 71, when they removed, gold from the gold standard. Do you know what I want to teach you before I leave here? Do you know the synonym that you need to start using for Bilderberg or the Rothschilds? It's called alloidial money. Pull that one up on the screen so he can see it. Alloidial money is money that has no superior, meaning there's no title. You know who that starts with? That starts with the papacy, and it starts with the royal family. In other words, nothing can be taken from them. Do you know what people have? See, alloidial title.
Click on that.
The people that back the industrial military complex are those people. They're the real problem. But guess what? They're the ones that have propped up Gates. They're the ones that have propped up the WHO. They're the ones that propped up the World Economic Forum. Dude, these are the more layers they put between them and us, the better it is, because guess what? What did I say to you before? Fact or fiction. Do you understand why guys like me and you, we get branded with the hat and we're the conspiracy theorists? But here's the thing that they didn't plan for. I'm a neurosurgeon. I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm a really good diagnostician. So good that I haven't been sued once in my career. I'm good at what I do. And I've held this story until right now. Why? Because it's important right now. It's important for my kids. It's important for your kids. It's important for every single person that's out there listening to this. I don't want to leave this planet with this information so that we have to go back through the dark ages again for 500 years until we take these motherfuckers out again. The person who made the mistake, do you know how this all started? Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria decided to marry into all the royal families to stop a war because she knew her family was filled with a bunch of idiots. And what did she wind up doing? She created World War I. It was a family squabble. And do you know what? You know what set them off and how they lost their alloidial titles? The Bolshevik Revolution. And guess what? When they killed the Tsar, who's the cousin of King George at the time in England and Kaiser Wilhelm in Germany, neither royal family could believe that. Do you know one of the most unprecedented things happened in the history of the 20th century that day when the Tsar was killed? The royal family, in case you don't know, their real name is Saxe-Coburg Gotha. They're German. They realized it wasn't popular to be on the wrong side of the war, given what happened with Romanov. So what did they do? They took a new name off a castle in the north of England called Windsor. And that's how he saved his ass. And what did he have to do? He had to agree to a new part of Parliament called the House of Lords or Commons. So he had to give power up to the people. He lost a alloidial title. That's how it started. But he did it to save his ass. So let me tell you something. Britain has won 2 world wars, and both times they lost. The first one was the big one, where they lost a lot of their power. What did they lose in World War I? They lost 2 things. They lost the sea to the U.S. Navy, but what's the big one? The Treaty of Versailles was a huge hit to the royal family because the way it was settled by the Keynesian economics, it guaranteed a second war. Why did they want a second war? To get back what they really lost. They lost a alloidial title, and they wanted it back. And if you don't think that I'm right about this, because you're talking to somebody who knows their history inside and out, after King George is dead, his brother takes over. You know who he is? Edward VII. Do you know Edward VII had to abdicate his throne? Do you know why? Because he supported Hitler. Hitler was part of their plan, dude. Oh, yes. They knew exactly what they were doing. Trust me.
Is this some of the stuff that Martyr Maid guy was talking about?
Yes, indeed. That dude is spot on the money. And you know what? When he said in a recent podcast, because I have been dead silent on this topic, that Churchill was one of the biggest shit shows in the history of the 20th century, it's true. Because what he basically hides is the real story. Everybody believes the 4 million Jews, the Holocaust, this and that. What people don't know is that the people that backed the royal family killed 60 million Christians in the Bolshevik Revolution. That is absolutely true. But guess what? It's very similar to the 1951 to 57 story where it was whitewashed from history. And every time that we have a period in history where something gets whitewashed, that's where I hope a guy like you, Danny Jones, in the future, as you age, when I'm dead, you remember the lesson I'm trying to teach you here. When you do podcasts, go find people that really know history. Danny, you know.
It's hard.
Well, I know, but you know that as a young man, when you were growing up, you didn't learn any history from General Groves all the way to right now. Do you understand why? Do you understand why they put your kids now for 8 to 10 hours a day? because they are training your children. You're not.
Yeah.
I am not kidding you, dude. And what else are they doing? No more books. They're irradiating. That's MK Ultra. But you know what the problem is?
You know, what pissed me off the other day was they started the teachers feeding my 5-year-old came home. He's like, you know what our teacher gave us for snack time today? I'm like, what did they give you? She's like, all week I've had Rice Krispies treats. You never let me have those at home. My wife was furious. She literally went up there and talked to the teachers the same day. It was like there can't.
Well, you're going to be more furious
insane.
when you find out that that's how Gates now plans to put some of the biotechnology in foods. That's the reason he's buying up farmland. It's also the reason he wants to block the sun. Because guess what? What's the antidote to blue screen technology? UV and red light. Why did Biden put the final damper on incandescent bulbs? It's going to be banned completely in 2028.
You say they said it was energy, but it wasn't energy.
No, it's because they know it's the blue light. The blue light keeps the system going in perpetuity. And none of you realize it. None of you, because you know what? A, you're not smart enough to know the history. B, you're not a neurosurgeon. You don't know anything about the non-visual photoreceptor system in man. And here's the sad part. Most centralized doctors don't either. Like, there's so many bombs that I gave you in this podcast already that people's heads are going to explode. And I don't expect them to know this an hour or 2 or 3. Like, you'll probably go back and listen to this 10 years from now.
Yeah.
When I'm dead, and you're going to go, bro, this guy was telling us the truth. And I'm going to say something. This may be hyperbolic, but this moment in your podcast, this is Paul Revere riding through Boston, and I'm telling you they're coming. You know what I expect?
What should people do about it?
I need you to put your pitchfork down and start rowing all in the same direction. We have to protect we the people. You may think I'm pessimistic. I'm not. You know why? A bunch of people who are misfits from the UK, who were farmers, who had pitchforks, got muskets, and beat the best army in the world. Well, let me tell you something, Danny. There's 360 million of us, and we still have that Second Amendment.
This is the problem that people don't understand, I think, for the most part, is that's why I think they want to keep us divided.
Correct. That's what all the game with the media is.
And how do we find a way to unite everybody?
I think this podcast is one of those things. People in New York and Virginia in 1776, they had different political aims.
Right.
They came together, so why can't we? Like, I've gotten criticism, not that you've leveled it, but people on Twitter have leveled it. It's like, Jack, on your Twitter profile, you say you're, a guy in exile. Yeah, you're right. But I casually point out, where's Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and James Madison home country? Was it the UK? Yeah. So they fixed it from being somewhere else. Why can't I?
Right.
I went to El Salvador and sat down with President Bukele and told him a lot of this story. And what did he say to me? How would you fix it, Jack? I said, I'd put a constitutional amendment that's just like Benjamin Rush asked Thomas Jefferson to do, so that the attack vector for the U.S. Constitution couldn't be medical tyranny. So you know what he told me to do? Write the law. I did. So Bukele has it. Guess who else has it? Bobby Kennedy. You know who else has got it now? Trump. This little neurosurgeon sitting across from you on a phone who came off a plane. I'm that dude, bro. Don't tell me that one of us can't do it. If not you, who?
It's terrifying shit.
Not for me, bro. You know what?
I haven't processed it yet, so.
I've been thinking and living this for 30 years. And I know it's a lot for people to hear, but it's kind of like the best thing I can try to educate you about this. You're like sitting across from me and you're a new person who I just diagnosed with a glioblastoma. And I'm telling you, you got a year to live. That's kind of the same thing I'm telling you here. The difference is I know you're going to die when you have a GBM, but I know you got a big chance here. You won't die and you won't be an economic slave for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 generations of your family. If you stop being apathetic and nihilistic and get off your ass, turn Netflix off, stop drinking the coffee, stop buying their products, and go take your country back. That's all you got to do. There's a reason I came here, bro.
How do you know all this shit and still have time to be a brain surgeon?
Let me ask you a question. If I'm madder than hell that my profession was stolen. We no longer, when I wrote my medical school application out, I had no idea that I was stepping in to basically an army that was programmed by the industrial military complex. And when I found that out in 2005, you'll hear this, Danny, many podcasts I do, I get madder than hell. When you ask me a question like that, I'm thinking about that 18 months when I realized everything. Now you know it just wasn't a story about leptin. It wasn't a story just about all the biology stuff that I teach. It was this fucking story in the background that I knew about this in the beginning. It was very easy for me to question them. Like many doctors ask me, how did you fight back? You know, I just did the live Twitter X's, and I have to tell you, you're the first person I've talked to since this. I haven't even discussed this with Chantel. Mary Bowden, the doctor that was sitting next to me, the ENT doctor, she said, you know, they had this plan because doctors are very compliant. You know, you have to do that for medical school and this and that. And I looked at her and I said, should I just drop this bomb right here, right now? And I didn't. I didn't say the things right then and there because here we are on Twitter. There's millions of people going to look at it. And I said, this isn't the appropriate venue to drop this. But let me just tell you something, Danny.
Thanks for destroying my podcast.
But I think every American should be infuriated that SV40 is in this. And here's the crazy part. For Steve behind the curtain in here, I'd like to hear your guys' take home. Now that I've given you the whole story, tell me what your first visceral thought is to know that the FDA still hasn't stopped today knowing everything that we know about the aftermarket data.
Well, I mean, it's just what the whole COVID pandemic really taught me, and I think a lot of people, is the revolving door between the FDA and the pharmaceutical industries. And the FDA seems to be more just like a propaganda wing for the pharmaceutical industry.
Actually, I'm going to tell you, it's part of the program. This is all MK Ultra, dude. You're seeing it laid out.
Yeah.
This is now MK Ultra. I have a pretty famous quote that was in my TED Talk that got banned. Ideation without execution leads to deletion of every good idea. Let me just tell you something. MK Ultra was a great idea that they originally stole from the Nazis.
Right.
But they executed. The Nazis didn't. That's the truth, bro. And I remember when I wrote that quote, I had General Kruse in mind when I wrote that quote. Dude, he's the biggest criminal in American history. And he has bred so many criminals. It started with Jimmy Byrne. Look, even the Manchurian candidate they set up, which was Harry Truman, because they got rid of the 3-term vice president, which was Henry Wallace. Dude, even when he realized he was hoodwinked, he couldn't do anything to stop it. That's how powerful these guys are. So the only president that has been, how shall I say, above board, they took out with acute lead toxicity. That's JFK. In my opinion, the country doesn't heal until we know the truth about what happened with him.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. And I'm telling you exactly what happened and why it happened and what all the collateral effects are of that decision. There's a reason. I'm not a political guy, but I put my chips behind Bobby and Nicole. He knows a lot of this story, but he can't talk about it either, bro, because you know what'll happen. But guess what? Have you ever found it unusual that everybody knows Trump used to be a Democrat? He was best friends with John F. Kennedy Jr. He said, when I get in, I'm going to tell people about what happened with JFK, but he didn't. Right. You know why? Because he found out just who was involved. Turns out some of his friends were involved.
Trump's friends?
Yeah, in the Mossad.
Yeah.
Israel.
You think that Israel was involved in
No
JFK?
question about it, dude. Let me just tell you something. Israel is knee deep in this.
What part? Why would Israel have anything to do with JFK?
Who was Meyer Lansky and Mo Dowlitz with? Dude, they wanted dirt on him. Let me ask you another question. Did you find it unusual that our boy Epstein, as soon as they broke into his apartment, what did they find over the mantle? A picture of Bill Clinton in Monica Lewinsky's blue dress.
Right.
Dude, the Mossad is about having information on the states.
Right.
What was I'll give you another one for your conspiracy theory, because we didn't talk about it yet.
Yeah, I'm just not buying
How'd they
the
get paid off? How'd they get paid off for JFK? Do you know how they got paid off?
Who get paid off?
The Israel people.
I don't think Israel was involved. I don't know. I haven't seen anything compelling
you know
for
anything
Israel
about
to be involved in JFK's assassination.
Well, I do. I know they were involved. Okay? Those guys, Jack Ruby was a Mossad agent. The Jewish mob was involved. Everybody in the mob was involved for different reasons, but they were involved. Mm-hmm. How'd they get paid off? Let's talk about the payoff.
I think it's possible that
you don't want to go there, do you?
No, I do, but I want to explain. I think it's possible that Israel was involved in the process, maybe downstream, but I think top level. I've had this guy on here multiple times. His name's John Newman. He's the guy that everybody who writes JFK books, they all write their books based on his work. He's the guy who's read the over 1 million declassified documents on JFK. He's been studying it his whole life, and his theory of the whole thing is that what happened in Dealey Plaza is all a distraction. He thinks that Dealey Plaza, the reason everybody talks about Dealey Plaza is because it's the exciting thing to talk about. It's where the bullet hit his head, and everything that led up to that is the important part of it.
That's because your boy Newman doesn't know the key pieces. What's the key pieces? What was the payoff? You remember back in early 1960s, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes.
And then we had all that was getting ready to come with the Jews and the Arabs about the war in 67 and all that. Mm-hmm. And Israel was really worried about themselves. And they told Kennedy, they first told Eisenhower, that we need a bomb. Our Jewish scientists gave you the bomb. We want the bomb. Eisenhower told them to go fuck themselves. Mm-hmm. Guess what JFK did? Same thing. In fact, do you know what JFK did right before he died, the year before he died? He actually told the Jewish state, I think it was Ben Gurion, that was the Israeli prime minister at the time, that not only are we not going to give it to you, but we want our guys to go in and examine what you're doing.
Yeah.
And they were furious. Guess what happened when LBJ came in? Magically,
he gave it to him. Some
uranium went missing at a place in Pennsylvania. And that is how they started their nuclear program. Pull that one up, Steve.
Yeah.
It's called, if I'm not mistaken, Dominion or Dimion. It's the Dimion incident that nobody seems to know about. But guess what? That was the payoff. And what's the collateral effect of this, my friend, that Newman probably doesn't want to go to? Turns out we happen to know.
Thank God for AI.
There you go. There it is, the Apollo affair.
1965 incident in which the U.S. company in Pennsylvania lost a large amount of highly enriched uranium that was suspected to be sent to Israel's nuclear weapons program.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Well,
so hold on. I'm not done yet.
Okay.
You're going to have to hold on for me now. Right, now I'm going to run your podcast.
This is your show.
No, here's the second thing that happens, the collateral effect. I think the guy you had on told you a little bit about this. This is the Ian Carroll cat. Mm-hmm. That all the Jews showed up in New York before 9/11 happens, and they're all in the
dancing
art.
Israelis?
No.
Oh, the art thing. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you know why? Because the Mossad trained the 4 Arabs to take the planes over and run them in the building. Mm-hmm. Got it? And what was the point of that? What was the point of that? Point of that was one point. You can pull this up. Is the Patriot Act was walking around Washington, D.C. from 1999 all the way to 2000, right. And everybody said, there's no way you can get this in. And George Bush said, hold my beer.
Yep.
And
you familiar with Thomas Drake?
Bro, I'm just telling you.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with you here.
Well, if you agree with that, then you better learn about that, because that was the payoff for JFK, and they've been involved ever since. And guess what? That brings us to current events with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, let's really make it current. Who's the new Jeffrey Epstein?
P. Diddy. Same exact prosecutor they used for Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, guess what? Bro, this is the same ball game, bro. I'm just telling you. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes awfully loud. And I'm telling you right now, everybody needs to know this story, every last piece of it is connected.
John's big point about JFK, he thinks that the big picture of it is that General Lemitzer and Taylor, they wanted a nuclear war. They wanted to nuke China and they wanted to nuke Russia.
Right.
And they had a meeting in June of 63 or 62 where Bobby Kennedy
did he
Sr.
ever
was
tell you why that was the case? I'm just curious.
He probably did. I'm not remembering off the top of my head.
Because both of them were proteges of Kruse, and that's what Kruse wanted to do.
Okay.
And Kruse stepped out. Who stopped Kruse? Eisenhower.
Right.
Remember what Eisenhower said in 1961? Farewell speech?
Yep.
Oh. Are you starting to see now what Kruse did? He went outside the military and still had control over the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all during Eisenhower and Kennedy's presidency. And you know what the interesting thing is, who opened up China in 1971? Nixon. Who was Nixon the vice president of? Eisenhower.
Right. I think the JFK assassination, though, I think like many things can be true at once. I think there was a lot of things going on there. One of the biggest smoking gun that John uncovered was there was an FBI flash stop on Oswald's file. The FBI was watching Oswald. They had a flash on his file. And a week before the assassination, it was removed from his file. So he basically says Oswald being on that route in Dallas was the equivalent of a flea being at a Lysol convention. There's no way he should have been there. The flash stop was removed.
But you got to remember something. There was a reason he was there.
Right.
He was working with the FBI agent on Magazine Street. That is documented in Judith Ferry's book. See, I'm going to tell you about Newman. He doesn't know about Judith Ferry Baker. He doesn't know anything about that. That's the reason you got to go back to him and say, bro, you're missing huge parts. I can tell he doesn't know shit about this Linac, but dude, I'm the guy that worked with that Linac. And I proved to you already that Bobby is the one that got the phone call when Ferry got killed. So if you don't think that story trumps anything that he thinks, what he's doing, he's trying to put breadcrumbs together. Everything I told you links perfectly. You don't have to believe it. And I'm not trying to convince you to believe it, but I'm telling you, this was done on purpose. And the reason the FBI stepped back is because they knew that Oswald was a CIA operative.
Right.
Without a doubt.
Right.
But he was there to be the patsy, and Oswald knew it. If you read Judith Ferry Baker's book, she said it. He told her 2 months before the assassination that he knew that he was going to be a patsy. The thing he didn't know is that his friends, Carlos Marsala and Jack Ruby, were going to take him out. Ruby is a Mossad agent.
Right. No, yeah, I agree with you. And John agrees with all of that stuff. He just believes that, and look, he, like everything that you're saying about Oswald being there, being a patsy, and Ruby working, he would probably agree with you on all of that stuff. His only point is that everyone wants to say the CIA killed Kennedy. His point is the CIA was the cover-up. The military killed Kennedy. It was a military coup, is his point.
No, but I think this is semantics and we're parsing words.
Exactly, yeah.
You have to realize that General Kruse was the military, and he is the deep state. It's where it began.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. See, the problem is, and I guess maybe the difference, him being a journalist and me being a doctor, I look at it making a diagnosis. To make a diagnosis, you got to go back to the root cause. I'm taking you back to the root cause.
Right.
That's the difference between me and them. And I have to tell you, it turns out that this part is the biggest missing story in the JFK story. And the truth be told, if you talk to the people in the Garrison family, if they'll ever talk, I doubt they will, I can tell you that they physically told me that her dad wanted to put fucking Oshner up on trial. He didn't want to go after Clay Shaw. Dude, do you realize he puts Alton Oshner on trial? Everything blows up. Like the Warren Commission never happens. And just remember the people that are on the Warren Commission. Like, I'll give you another example why I don't trust any of the journalists. And this will probably get me in a little bit of trouble with the JFK thing. But you know the guy who's...
You're not getting any more trouble than you already got.
But you know the guy he's now doing stuff with Paramount and talking about the mob and this thing. I think his name is Tom Maine.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this guy.
Right.
Tom
He's doing the stuff with all like
Mayer, Thomas Mayer.
you got it. So do you know what award that he won in the past? The John McCloy Award. Do you know that John McCloy sat on the Warren Commission? Do you know that if you go listen to things that he says, he tries to listen to him really carefully.
Yeah.
He tries to skate around a lot of stuff that you and I are talking about.
Really?
Dude, he's who the Church Commission warned us about. Do you want to know how many people in this industry that you're talking about, that they're scammers, that they're working for the other team? How about 99% of them?
Right. No,
That's what I'm trying to tell you, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Just remember, what's my day job? Am I making any money off the JFK thing?
No.
I'm a doctor.
Yeah. You're not selling.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I need you to understand.
No, I get it.
Incentives dictate outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
These guys have made an industry out of this guy's death.
Right.
What am I telling you? This is about the Republic, bro.
Yeah.
It's a totally different ballgame. And what am I asking you to do? Use your head.
Jack, this is f***ing fascinating, but I have like all this stuff I want to learn from you about health and about science and medicine too. So can we transition a little bit and talk some more about like your background in brain surgery and
Sure.
And what you do? I want to learn more about like the protocols that you use to live your life and to subvert this like blue light attack that is happening to everybody.
Because basically, my science, decentralized science, the quantum biology, comes down to three things. We talked about it in the beginning. Light, water, magnetism. So if you distill what I do, you have to optimize those three arms. If you optimize those three arms, you can stay away from centralized medicine. You can stay away from big pharma. You can live a good life and not have to worry about being tethered to that sausage maker.
Yeah.
That's really why the TED Talk was banned. They didn't want that message out. They wanted you on Ozempic.
Right. You had a story of a lady who came to you in your one of your clinics, and you had no idea why she came to you, but she.
Oh, I know where you're. This is the thing we talked about in Rick's podcast.
Yes, the lady who wanted French fries.
Well, yeah.
There was another lady too. I want to hear both these stories.
There's a couple of them, but the one you're talking about specifically, this is before I had my come to Jesus moment, meaning the whole quantum biology thing. It was very unusual. A lady tried to get in my office. The girls in my office blocked her because they thought she was a bit crazy. And she said, look, I don't have a neurosurgical problem, but Dr. Kruse was involved in my care in a very weird way. And she told the girl at the front desk that she had a heart transplant because she had, I think it was myocarditis, but from a virus.
Right.
And she got a heart, and I was the neurosurgeon that got the family to donate this kid's heart. And she figured that out somehow through the paperwork that the hospital gave her. And it turned out she was right. And when I heard the story, immediately I knew what she was talking about, and I had to go back and look at my files to see the details around the kid. But the thing that I remembered is the kid was at a McDonald's drive-thru and a car came and T-boned him, and he just got his like Happy Meal. And the thing that they mentioned in the EMT report is that the kid had French fries all over his front seat. And I remember his mom telling me, she goes, oh, if he never went to McDonald's, but he always loved their French fries. That was what stuck in my head. So I actually had to go back and pull the kid's chart to find out. And it turned out I was the neurosurgeon that pronounced him brain dead. So that's when I called up, the organ procurement agency and got the family to donate. I'm a little bit different than most neurosurgeons. A lot of neurosurgeons turn it over to the hospital and let them do it. I think it's much better if the neurosurgeon talks to the family that way, because we can answer questions way better than they can.
Right.
And neurosurgeons are pretty good about subtracting the emotion out when something like this happens. Like, Danny, it's hard to say this to someone across the table, but neurosurgeons deal with death and destruction more than any other doctor in any other specialty.
Right.
So we're really good at it. Now, I'm going to tell you.
More than heart surgeons?
Oh, yeah. Not even close. Heart surgeons don't deal with death hardly at all.
Oh, okay.
Just the ones they kill. But the thing that happens with us, we catch people at all parts of life. People that have GBMs, at the end of their life, like 70, 80 years old, but kids that have subdurals, epidurals, that are 18, 19 years old. I mean, the last case that I did, I just took a bullet out of someone's temporal lobe who I think was 22 years old. And the thing is, when you deal with that stuff all the time, you're the best person to talk to the family. I had an uncanny record of getting people to donate because I think this happens to be a skill set that I have, a really good skill set. And part of me, it bothers me because I know that these people are going to be tethered to big pharma, but at the same time, the most valuable asset that we can give in decentralized medicine is the gift of time. And I have to tell you, I think the reason I feel passionate about this, if you know the other parts of my story when I talk about Bitcoin, I tell people Bitcoin is a time machine, but I'm going to tell you that your mitochondria in you is also a time machine. And when you do an organ transplant, you're effectively giving someone a time machine. And to me, that's the reason why early in my career, the people that taught me, that's why I go all in. It's probably, it's hard to talk about. When other people are going through tragedy, you realize that you can give the gift of time to somebody else who it's running out of. There's no surgery that I can do that can give that back. And the crazy part, I'm not even doing surgery. So I have never told anybody. I have a famous term where I say it's brain surgery without a scalpel. This is the exact idea that I came up with, why I decided to be good at this, because I knew that I could give people back time if I was really good at doing that. And the reason I sat down and talked to that lady is because I knew how important it was to her. And then I thought about the family and I thought about the kid. And that mother, I'll never forget her. It was heart-wrenching for her. And I told her that her son would still be alive, just in a different format. And I remember it like it was yesterday. But when that lady walked in, and it was like reality hit me in the face. I was telling the mom that, and it turned out I got the lesson. And I think it happened before I went through my own come to Jesus moment, because this was preconditioning me to realize that I had to go on this journey. And when you realize that a lot of things that you're doing to people isn't the right thing, and this is the right thing, that's when you have to go all in. And I said a couple things to you when we were talking about the JFK thing, that incentives dictate outcomes. That's the day that incentives stopped dictating outcomes for me. That's when things began to change for me. That's when I started doing things based on time and not based on money. And that's why that story, I don't like to think about it, because for me, there's very few cases in a neurosurgery career where you know that you were changed. That was a big one.
Wow, man. Especially, I can't imagine the amount of death you see.
Oh, well, if I told you what I've seen just in the last 4 years, I mean, I told Chantal this. I'd go back and work a week of trauma call, and I'd see at least 13 blood clots and at least 5 or 6 turbo cancers. Like, people would have cancer and there was no explanation. And I can tell you, I started doing some I think hospital systems would say it's fucked up, but this goes back to this story with the kid with the thing. I told the people, they want to know, how did this happen? I said, well, it's pretty simple. Go send your tissue to Philip Buchholz in South Carolina and let him fucking sample it. If you got SV40 in it, I can tell you exactly how it happened. So anybody who listens to your podcast, their attorneys, now you have, the answer. And how do I know that I'm accurate about that? This is another mind fuck to the other story, but we're now talking about medicine. When I was going through the process of trying to figure out this SV40 thing very, very early on, in 1992, I became aware of a PhD researcher who is looking at the mesothelioma data. And mesothelioma is a very rare cancer. Like, I can tell you, my career, when I first started, no one ever got it. Then people started getting it. And now they blamed everything on asbestos, and I never bought that story. So you can imagine about 5 or 6 years later, when I find out the story about JFK, the and everything else, I'm going, could this new cancer that nobody knows about be linked to SV40? So I go to the medical school library at LSU, and I find this cardiothoracic surgeon who's kind of famous. He's done more mesothelioma surgeries than anybody else, because it's pretty rare to do surgery on these people. Mm-hmm. He has 472 specimens in his office. PhD goes and researches it. They check it all. Every single case of mesothelioma had SV40 in it. So Steve can pull this one up. I can tell you the article was written in the Atlantic, because I remember when I did my homework on it, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. And that's just another data point for me, where you have a weird cancer and you ask the question. Mm-hmm. So the story that I told you in the beginning of this podcast, here it is again in a fractal. In my medical career, I asked the question, is mesothelioma really an asbestos story, an SV40 story? When I found out that's the case, here I am now at the end of my career. We're talking the last 6 months, that I've been doing neurosurgery. Mm-hmm. I started telling everybody who got a turbo cancer, go tell your pathologist to send your cancer to the University of South Carolina. Why? Because Philip Buchholz has blocked me on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I'm sure at some point he's going to see some of this and he's going to realize he made a mistake. Yeah. But he was a fucking bad hombre who became a good hombre because he validated Kevin's findings. So now, if he really wants to be a good PhD researcher, he will take these people who've been injured and tell them why they have turbo cancer. And the surgeon who did the mesothelioma stuff, he just did it because he was a cowboy, but he doesn't realize how incredibly important that one decision was in his life for a guy like me. Because I couldn't sit here with you and have this discussion. That was one of the big things that happened. And I feel the same way about the people today. So, when we talk about the kid with the transplant, we talk about those stories. I will tell you, there's very few cases that bothered me like the kid with the french fries. There's another one from my residency, believe it or not, that Chantal's involved with.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It'd probably be better for you to interview her about it, because it kind of teaches you a little bit about the type of guy that I am. I was a chief resident at Charity Hospital, and we had a little girl come in about 3:00 in the afternoon. She got home from one of her, her Catholic private schools. And some guy was waiting there to rape her. And the guy got in and she fought like a fucking animal. She had this guy's DNA everywhere. I mean, she fought. And the way I don't think he ever got to her because she fought like a fucking Wolverine. But he took a brass lamp and smashed the side of her head, and literally her head was pushed into the opposite side. Ugh. I'm talking about like all the skull and everything. And of course she comes in, and you probably don't know this, but Chantal was my operating room nurse when I was a resident.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And this girl comes up and I call Chantal and I said, look, open every fucking thing we have. Because, of course, when the EMTs came in and the nurses in the emergency room, they told me the story of this little girl. And I'm like, there's no way she's dying on my dime. And I looked at her. The nurses actually told me, look at her fingernails. She fought. And I said, well, I'm going to fight for her. So the staff doctor that is on, and this is so funny because this doc was kind of involved in monkey research. So again, yeah, it's actually tied to the other story. That's why I said this is quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
And I take the little girl up, and I'm up there. Shift change for the nurses is right around 6 o'clock, so Chantal's going home, and I'm blasting Metallica. I just keep putting the Black Album on constantly. And I basically told everybody, just fucking get out of my way. And the staff doctor who's there comes in the room, and he's like, Jack, enough. You mean you're putting blood products into this kid? You're doing this is just not going to end well. I'm looking at the scan and this and that, and I look at him. Remember, I'm just the chief resident. I basically tell the staff doctor, go fuck yourself. I said, you get out of my operating room. Dude, I could be fired for this. I was like literally 6 months away from being done. Wow. And I told him, just get the fuck out of my room. And all the nurses, like all the other residents, I told everybody else, I said, if you have a fucking problem with this, leave. And guess what? Everybody went like fire ants. Everybody went all in. Dude, when I tell you, I've never had a case in my career that I opened like 50 trays to get different instruments out. Chantal comes back to work the next day, and I'm still operating on the little girl.
Oh, my God.
So guess what? The sun is coming up. Metallica is still on. And I make the decision. I take the final piece of bone out of, her basal ganglion.
Oh,
and I'm going now close to 20 hours straight. Don't eat, don't drink, don't even take a break. And Chantal comes back in, and I look at her, and she looks at me. I said, now I want you to go find me the biggest piece of lyophilized dura you can get. And this is a dural replacement because I actually had to cut this all out. When I tell you.
A what replacement? Oh,
it's the dura, the covering of the brain.
Right.
And she goes, what are you going to do with something that big? And I said, this little girl's brain is going to swell so much it's going to look like a basketball. So she had no bone left on that side of her head. So my idea was to leave a big, huge balloon and let her swell into it. At that time, I hit her with more methylene blue than any patient I've ever done in my entire career. The reason why is I was trying to control the swelling. That also comes up in the Rick Rude podcast.
What year is this?
This is 1998.
For people who are uninitiated, can you explain what methylene blue is? Methylene blue?
Well, let's talk about it in real terms. See, remember, when you work smarter, or when you know better, you do better, or your patients do better. That was a lesson that I got from Becker. So I hit this girl with the methylene blue, and what the methylene blue does, it improves mitochondrial function so that the brain won't swell. When you have a case like this, the thing that you're really worried about is the brain will swell outside the head.
Yeah.
And it won't end well. And remember, I think she was 15 or 16 years old. Her mom had told me that she was getting ready to go to college and this and that. And I'm going, I'm doing everything I possibly can.
Is there any way at this point to keep someone I know you can keep them alive, but can you keep them cognitively able to get through the day?
I think I'm telling you that story right now.
Okay.
So the little girl goes through surgery. Of course, I take some shit from the staff doctor, but when the staff doctor saw the post-op scans, and he's like, she doesn't have any bone left anywhere in her brain. You got every single fragment out. And this is in the day before we had neural navigation. I did this, bro, by feeling with my fingers. Oh. And when I took it all out, I finished my residency. So I don't know what she does. Because, after she gets through the acute phase, she goes through rehab. And then for us, she's lost to history. I get a call when I'm in private practice in Tennessee. Her mother calls my office and says, we'd like to send Dr. Kruse a letter, and the office manager at the time, her name's Karen Smith. She comes in and says, Jack, can we give him this? I said, yeah, I think I know who this is. She writes me a letter. Her daughter got out of rehab. She's back to walking. She's almost back to talking. I get another letter. I think it was 2 years later. She's in college. I got a letter, I think about 3 years after that, she graduated.
No way.
Mm-hmm. So this is that lesson that I'm trying to teach you. It ain't fucking over until we say it's over. I told you that story with politics, but I'm telling you, that little girl, that happened at the right time in my life. I was an ass kicker when I was a resident, but let me just tell you something. I learned more from that case than probably any case that I've ever done. And when you know something, you go all in. You don't hold back. That's the lesson. And I got news for you. Most neurosurgeons who listen to this are like, there's no way that I would have been allowed to do that as a chief resident. Well, I don't think anybody would have been allowed to do that either, but they let me do it because they knew a lot about me. They knew who I was. I was a fucking rebel even when I was a resident. But I was adamant that I was not giving her up. And I will tell you, I've given up on other patients since then. But I didn't have the feeling that I had for this girl. I knew this girl was going to live.
Wow. How many neurosurgeons, like the top neurosurgeons in the world that you've talked to, how many of them are implementing the same things that you're talking about, like with methylene blue? And I think there was a case you talked about on Rick's podcast with where you doused some lady came to you, wanted brain surgery, and you said, only if I can douse your brain in hydrogen peroxide and methylene blue.
So I actually learned that when I was in residency training from actually Dr. Klein. I mean, I remember this is old school neurosurgery, and he would tell me, all the things that he did. And of course, I didn't believe anything he said. So I went and I started reading about it. And I said, well, this totally makes sense. Hydrogen peroxide is a free radical. We put it on the surface of the brain where the mitochondria are. We're creating hydrogen, oxygen, and more electrons. I'm like, this makes total fucking sense. And the problem was none of the other residents really thought it worked because they thought, he's an old school guy and this is bullshit. And then the other thing that I started noticing when I did that, it was a great way to get blood out of the subarachnoid space. A lot of neurosurgeons know it from that aspect, like when we do aneurysm surgery, because we know if we leave any blood in that area, it causes vasospasm and people can develop strokes down the road. So you want to try to get all the blood out as you can. And, we have treatments that we use for that, but the treatments are not really good. We have drugs that are designed for that. The drugs really aren't good. And when I came out of residency, probably 5-6 years later, the hydrogen peroxide story got changed, where I added UV light and infrared that I would put on the brain.
Red light?
Yeah. And guess what happened? The brain swelling, outcomes did well. Remember the story I told you that I didn't have any suits or anything else? I did high volume neurosurgery in my practice. I did a lot of cranial surgery. All these things that I started doing were part of the reason why I didn't get sued. I remember doing spine surgery on people who had open dura from me doing a lumbar fusion and putting UV light. Like, I guarantee you this, people on my surgical team are going to listen to this. They're going to say, we thought he was fucking crazy. But I wasn't crazy because guess what? The science, it wasn't well known now, but now it's much better known. So I'm telling you now, 20 years after me starting to do this, like 5 to 10 years in my practice, I've become less crazy over time.
Right. And
that's the reason why I'm telling you that you have to be serious about your craft. And I think the more serious you are about your craft and you understand what you're doing, it's important. And unfortunately, I trained at a time where doctors worked for the patient. Today, most neurosurgeons, they're working for a hospital system. So that means there's an oracle problem. Doctors aren't working for you. They're working for the hospital.
Right.
And you need to understand that. Patients don't understand that right now. That's one of the biggest problems in centralized medicine.
When it comes to the red light, the infrared red light, there's these these panels you can buy online. There's various brands of them, and some of them have infrared light. Is this what you're specifically talking about when you're shining this on the brain?
Yeah, in brain surgery, there's two things I want to do. I need to have a light that covers infrared A, which is 600 to 1,000 nanometer light. But the big switch is I have to have near infrared. Near infrared,
yes,
goes a little further because there's a photo switch that I learned about after I had my come Jesus moment. It's 1,280 nanometer light. That photo switch is actually important with 380 nanometer light. That's actually the big control switch between anabolic and catabolic metabolism. And what does that effectively mean? When you use those specific frequencies of light, you can optimize metabolism while the patient's asleep. So if any of my anesthesiologists listens to this and they want to know why I was doing what I did, I never told anybody what I was doing because I was always afraid I'd wind up in front of the medical board. But I was guaranteeing that people would wake up from anesthesia like this because I knew that was one of the big risks, that we need to have people recover fast. And it turns out if you understand the two photo switches for metabolism, which is 380 nanometer light, that controls the mTOR switch. 1280 light controls the free radical switch. And that's the decision between the use of ATP and free radicals. Most people don't realize that because they don't know mitochondrial medicine well.
Right.
Nitric oxide is also a free radical, and it has an unpaired electron. Nitric oxide, when it gets into your mitochondria, actually turns ATP production off. Like most doctors who will listen to this think that we need to use ATP all the time. It turns out when we're in the sun, we actually reduce the amount of ATP we make. We're actually living off the light of the sun through energizing our blood plasma, which has water in it, 93%.
Right.
So one of the key bases, I told you, is light water magnetism. Turns out when you're able to bury more light energy in water networks in a cell, patients do better. That's one of the key foundational principles that I'm telling you. How did I learn all that? I learned it from the story of photosynthesis. Why? Because of chlorophyll and hemoglobin. They look exactly the same. And you said that you listened to the Huberman podcast, and I know there was a lot of science in there, but you might remember that I told you the two most important biologic semiconductors before the KT event were hemoglobin and chlorophyll. Why?
Right.
Because they have a nitride cage around it. These were the two key semiconductor proteins that we use to make electrons. So when I realized that, and I started to think about what happened from the KT event to us, I said, there's got to be other pieces and parts of the story. And what was the pieces and parts that I realized? That the semiconductor proteins were giving their light that Becker found in his work to the water networks. And that would actually turn water into a quantum mechanical battery. So this is in 2005. Now remember, none of this is published in a textbook at this time. But guess what? Everything I just told you today is now published in papers and textbooks. That's Jack Kruse.
There was also a point you guys were having a discussion, and I think Huberman corroborated this about the amount of information that's in the textbooks that you get in your medical training. And you were having a conversation with somebody, and he was saying that, Eddie Chang, yes,
yeah, the guy from USC, USF,
and he said maybe 50% of it,
99, 100. It's all bullshit. Look,
that's hard to comprehend.
No, it's not. When you understand
for
why.
Like me.
Yeah, but even for you, it's not. You just heard the JFK story I gave you. So what can I tell you? Every single nutrition study, every single study that any PhD or doctor reads has no light controls. So we're making the assumption that how it really works, and you don't have light controls, and I just told you how important light is. I mean, is it that hard to believe what I said is probably true? And then here's the bigger part of the story. Our mitochondria makes a special kind of water. It's called deuterium depleted water. You don't get any deuterium depleted water coming out of your tap at home. So what happens if you ran all the experiments with that type of water? And it turns out that water has a high dielectric constant. And what does that mean in English? It means it makes more electrons. What's the story of life? The more electrons you have, the better you do. What do electrons do? Funny little Jewish guy from Bern, Einstein, photoelectric effect. More electrons you have, the more light you could absorb. It's not that hard to get, dude. When you see the magic, you go, this is really a game of net negative charge and electrons so that you can absorb more light. The more light you put in the system, okay, the brain shrinks down. So when you ask me the question, Chuck, why are you using methylene blue? Because I knew it was a path to get me more electrons. And if I get more electrons and I'm shining light on the brain, that actually helps the brain. That makes me a better surgeon.
And all the lights that you guys use during surgery, those big bright lights, they're blue lights, right?
Yeah, they're xenon. And I told everybody to go get a spectroscope and put it on their operating room microscope, put it on their loops on their head, put it on the lights in the room, and then correlate that with how your patients do certain ones. And the funny thing I also said in that podcast, I remember I specifically changed where I did surgery into a hospital that didn't have the best equipment in the world. But you know what they had? They had a courtyard that I could bring my patients outside in the sun. And the anesthesiologist didn't with me, and fight with me about doing this. And they were stunned. They were like, I can't believe this guy's patients just wake up and they do great when they shouldn't. Like the other doctors who operate on people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, they would be in the ICU for 2 or 3 days because they had sundowning and everything else. And I would do my subdurals and bring the patient outside, and they're like, this fucking guy's going home the next day. That is how powerful sunlight is for our biology. But you know what the problem is? You never get to open this door in centralized medicine because they don't even know it exists.
You are a nightmare to the high priests in their ivory towers of academia.
But I'd have it no other way.
Right.
I feel like I was built for this moment. I can tell you, I told Nicole this and I've said it to Bobby and Rick. There's a proper time for your life's work to come out. This is that time. This is when I can make the biggest impact.